Chapter 1199. Dong Qitian frowned when he heard that the black-robed man recognized him. This was truly out of their expectations. For experts with profound cultivation bases like them, 4,000 years was not a long time. However, this not a long time was only suitable for the top-notch cultivators in the bound of universe. For the rest of the world, this time limit was so long that it was enough for the seas to turn into mulberry fields. Who knew how many dynasties had changed in the world? How many cycles? Originally, he had thought that it was just a chance encounter, a chance to strike. Who would have thought that the target actually knew him? In that case, he didn't know if this was a chance encounter or an ill-fated one. Just as Dong Qitian's mind was drifting with doubt, the black-robed man let out a strange cackle. His body exploded with a boom, turning into 9 black lines that escaped from Dong Qitian's shackled hand. In the blink of an eye, they gathered again and stood in the air. Instead of diminishing, their power increased. Then, he clenched his hand into a fist and punched out forcefully. Dong Qitian, don't you recognize me? As soon as this punch struck out, everywhere it passed, strange phenomena appeared successively. First, a golden dragon appeared, and then a ferocious tiger roared. The dragon and tiger shook their heads and wagged their tails in the air, circling back and forth. They looked mighty and insufferably arrogant. Dong Qitian took a closer look and was shocked to see that there was a blazing sun above the dragon's head, and a crescent moon on the tiger's body. It was a scene of the dragon leaping and the tiger leaping, the sun and moon in the same sky. Thoughts raced through Dong Qitian's mind before he finally wore a surprised expression. Ever since he was reborn, he had never taken half a step back. For the first time, he took 2 steps back before he countered with a punch. Both fists collided with each other, but there was not much of a commotion. There was not even a distinct sound of punches. Yin Yang, who had freed himself from the black robe, was shocked. He knew very well that Dong Qitian's cultivation base was far beyond what he knew. The black-robed man in front of him was actually a peerless expert who could go toe-to-toe with Dong Qitian. If that was the case, was his so-called plan not a joke? Just as Yin Yang was deep in thought, the punches that had collided with each other, the seemingly insignificant punch's true power was revealed. The aftermath of the punch caused the surrounding mountains and rivers to tremble. A few mountains in the distance also exploded with endless roars after this moment. Large pieces of rocks from the cliffs fell down. Obviously, it had caused a considerable range of landslides. Shockingly, the force of their fists had already arrived at an extremely high realm where it was restrained and didn't reveal its edge. It was truly shocking and horrifying. It was Yin Yang's first time witnessing a battle between 2 experts of such caliber. Dong Qitian's expression turned extremely sour after the clash as he hollered, "Dragon Tiger Soul. Sun Moon Seal. Soul Demon King, you are not dead yet?" At this moment, Dong Qitian, whose thoughts were confirmed, broke out in cold sweat. However, the cold sweat was not for himself, but for Yin Yang. Before the operation just now, Dong Qitian had asked Yin Yang to test the waters first, which was why Yin Yang had launched the ambush just now. The move was done with good intentions, to allow Yin Yang to gain more experience and have an additional chance to fight with a superior expert. After all, in Dong Qitian's opinion, Yin Yang's previous pretense was practically toying with the other party in the palm of his hand. Although it was an unintentional move, the other party's true ability was much stronger than Yin Yang's, but the disparity was not so great that there was not even room for him to test the waters. Furthermore, he was nearby. Even if the other party's ability was stronger than expected, he could still lend a hand and not let anything happen to Yin Yang. In spite of this, the truth was that the other party was actually an old demon that had never been seen in this world. How could Dong Qitian not be frightened? The Soul Demon King was an ancient demon, one of the top experts in the demon realm. Back in the pinnacle battle between the humans and the demon clan, both sides had unleashed their full strength, intending to end the battle in one fell swoop. Therefore, all the experts from both sides had participated in the battle, risking their lives to fight to the death. Both sides had the intention to destroy the other, so they came up with their own plans and resorted to every conceivable means. At the critical moment, the demon clan was about to break through the humans' defense and charge into the bound of universe. Once they entered, it would be a catastrophe. A human senior had hardened his heart and gathered 99 Saint Emperors. With the 99 Saint Emperors cultivation base and blood essence as the price, he set up the 99 demonic formation at the location where the demon clan entered and exited the bound of universe. The 99 demonic formation was an extreme formation that hurt oneself before hurting the enemy, because the foundation of this formation was the heroic sacrifice of 99 Saint Emperors. They sacrificed all of their souls, blood essence, and cultivation base to form the foundation of the ultimate attack. Then, the other martial artists lured the demon clan wave after wave into the demonic formation that spanned 3,000 miles. Wave after wave, they were killed. As it turned out, the sacrifice of the 99 Saint Emperors did not go to waste. The number of experts of the demon clan that were killed by this formation numbered in the millions. It was a glorious battle result. Furthermore, this formation had the terrifying property of increasing the power of the formation bit by bit as the number of demon clan experts killed increased. As more and more demon clan experts were killed, even if they were at the peak of the Saint Venerable level, once they entered the formation, they would be in a situation of certain death. After killing several Saint Venerables, the power of the formation increased again. It was already able to threaten the life and death of Saint Monarchs. Because of this, the Demon Emperor did not dare to be negligent anymore. He sent out a total of 8 Saint Monarch Old Demon Kings. Together with the 500,000 Demon Clan army, they charged into the formation. The result of this battle was that out of the 500,000 Demon Clan army, 430,000 died. Of the 8 Saint Monarchs, 1 died in battle, and 2 were so severely injured that they lost their cultivation base forever. Only then did the 99 demonic formation break. None of the human seniors who fought in the demonic formation survived. However, even if the 99 demonic formation was broken, the demon clan's vitality was greatly damaged, and the result was irreversible. Humans had taken the opportunity during this period of time to build the Bloody Soul Mountain, isolating the 2 realms of humans and demons. However, the affairs of the world were changeable. The old site of the demonic formation that destroyed thousands of demons had become the only channel that could connect the 2 realms. At the same time, in the broken 99 demonic formation, a peerless great demon was born. It was a special great demon that was born from the accumulation of boundless resentment after the death of countless demon clan members, and the formation's soul power could not overflow after it was destroyed. In other words, it was the soul demon. The so-called soul demon, as the name suggested, was a special life form that advanced by devouring souls. On the day the soul demon was born, heaven and earth changed color because of it. However, in a short time, it became a demon king, a great demon king, and a demon venerable. Its speed of advancement was something that few humans and demons could match. It was also because of this demon that the human side sent a total of 8 Saint Venerables to encircle and kill it. That was when Dong Qitian was still outside. It was the most tragic battle between humans and demons apart from the pinnacle of human and demon. Countless human experts encircled the soul demon. Among the 8 Saint Venerables at that time, Dong Qitian was the leader. In other words, Dong Qitian had seen with his own eyes that the soul demon was smashed into pieces and turned into ashes. Its soul should have been annihilated, never to be reincarnated. Now, however, this old demon was not dead. Not only was he not dead, but he had appeared alive in front of him, fighting against him. Tricky. Very tricky. Thinking back to his action of letting Yun Yang attack first just now, it was extremely dangerous and critical. If the soul demon did not have the intention to ask questions and directly attack to kill, even if Dong Qitian attacked with all his might, he might not be able to save Yun Yang in time. After the blow, the soul demon stared at Dong Qitian and suddenly let out a strange laugh. The black robe covering his head slowly fell, revealing a human face with slender eyes that seemed to contain endless evil. "Old friend, if you're not dead, how can I die?" The soul demon's slender eyes looked at Dong Qitian eerily. Back then, you, supreme saint equaling heaven, combined your 7 swords into one, broke my chest, broke my heart meridians, crushed my internal organs, kicked me 18 times in a row, and crushed my skull. This old man hasn't fully returned such a deep friendship to you. How can I bear to die? Dong Qitian regained his composure when he heard Han Yao's words of extreme hatred. He chuckled and said, Han Yao, I'm truly surprised that you've escaped death and reappeared today. However, after that exchange just now, your cultivation base has regressed a lot compared to back then. You were not my opponent back then, and now, you're even less of a match for me. The soul demon's eyes flickered, and after a pause, he retorted sarcastically, it's only been a few years since this old man died and came back to life. It's only right that I'm far from being your opponent. If this old man could defeat you, why would I be wasting words with you now? Even if your cultivation base is far superior, so what? Can you, Dong Qitian, kill me alone? Dong Qitian fell silent at once. The soul demon's own attributes were unique. Born from the demonic spirit of resentment, it possessed the ability of demonic primordial qi and qi incarnation. It was almost an all-pervasive existence. Dong Qitian had clearly captured it before, but the other party still managed to escape easily, which proved this point. In that battle back then, the 8 great supreme saints had gathered to use the heaven and earth cage technique to completely seal off the 4 dimensions and countless spaces. Only then could the soul demon be completely trapped. Only by locking down the location of its true body could it be killed. Now, it was only Dong Qitian alone. His cultivation base was far superior, but it was another matter to completely block the soul demon's escape route. Both sides knew the foundation of the other's strength, so there was no need to argue and add insult to injury. In other words, even if the soul demon was now on his last breath, Dong Qitian alone was still unable to keep the other party. It's not up to you to decide whether I can kill you or not. We'll only know after we've fought. After all, we're old friends who meet again after a lifetime. It doesn't make sense not to fight to liven things up. Dong Qitian shook his head and chuckled. The soul demon said coldly, it turns out that all of this is your plot. What a coincidence. Dong Qitian did not deny it and said indifferently, my original intention was just to catch a demon king, but I never thought that I'd catch a big shark. I actually caught an old acquaintance, an old flame. I really don't know if I should say it's a coincidence or not. The soul demon said, you want this little cat demon? Dong Qitian narrowed his eyes. What do you mean? The soul demon laughed. Why are you pretending to be confused? You've used so many tricks. Isn't it just to catch this little cat demon and bring it back? Dong Qitian pondered in his heart, his expression unchanged as he said indifferently, of course, I'm going to keep this little cat demon. However, if you, soul demon, don't stay, this little cat demon won't live long. The soul demon frowned and asked warily, what do you want? Dong Qitian said, you and I know each other's strength. Although I can't kill you, it's not difficult to injure you again. He narrowed his eyes and said faintly, soul demon, you've recuperated for thousands of years after your last serious injury. If I were to injure you again, I wonder how long you'll need to recuperate. Thousands of years? Or tens of thousands of years? As soon as Dong Qitian said that, the soul demon hesitated. After a long time, the soul demon gritted his teeth and said, for the sake of our old friendship, I'll give in to you this time, Saint Master equaling heaven. Just tell me your conditions, won't you? Dong Qitian said, I have 2 requests. The first is to remove the seal on the cat demon, the second, I'll ask you a question, and you must answer truthfully. The soul demon snorted and said, the first is no problem. Ask the second, I'll consider it. What's your relationship with Lei Qinli? Dong Qitian asked. The soul demon's eyes revealed a sly glint as he said softly, I can answer you directly. Lei Qinli and I are also old acquaintances. This is the truth. Then, he laughed and flicked his hands. A few black lines rose from Bai Bingxian and the other cat demons and returned to the soul demon's hands. Then, he leaped up and said, Dong Qitian, you'd better live well. There's still time to settle the score between us. Amidst the laughter, the soul demon burst like a soap bubble under the sunlight in the air. This move was inexplicably strange, but in fact, it was marvelous and amazing. Elder Dong, what is this? The soul demon? Yin Yang was still shaken and terrified. It's amazing. The situation just now could be regarded as one of the greatest dangers Yin Yang had ever experienced in his life. He was infinitely close to death. Under the irresistible power of the soul demon, even if Yin Yang had the ability to change in the support of the manifestation powers, there was still no room for him to turn the situation around. He could only wait for his death. And this was just a casual move from the soul demon. What's more, listening to the conversation between Dong Qitian and the big demon, it was clear that the big demon's current state had fallen to the lowest point of his life, and the big demon was even inferior to Dong Qitian in the past when he was at his peak. Now that Dong Qitian was stronger than he was in the past, how strong could Dong Qitian be? In the past, Yin Yang's understanding of Dong Qitian's cultivation base was beyond his understanding. Now that he thought about it, he had clearly underestimated it. Dong Qitian's cultivation base should be far beyond his understanding, or perhaps it was the pinnacle of this world. The soul spirit is a special life form rarely seen since ancient times. It's probably a place where too much power of the soul has gathered. Because of the special terrain of the place or the protection of the formation, it's difficult to disperse, thus turning it into spiritual consciousness. The soul demon, on the other hand, is a step further than ordinary soul spirits because the power of the soul that gives birth to its spirit is all demonic, so its nature is closer to that of a demon, possessing both characteristics. Dong Qitian's expression was solemn. Although the soul demon doesn't have the innate qi, the bones of its father's soul, and the flesh of its mother's blood, and it can't cultivate to the pinnacle level in its lifetime, the soul demon is derived from the characteristics of a life form. It has many elusive means, almost no different from an immortal body. It's extremely difficult to deal with. Take the old demon as an example. Although it's impossible for him to cultivate to the level of a saint even if he exhausts his entire life, as long as he ascends to the pinnacle of the supreme saint, even ordinary saint lords would find it difficult to do anything to him. There's one more thing. As long as it's alive, including the pinnacle of a saint or even a half-saint, their control of the power of the soul is absolutely incomparable to the soul demon. Dong Qitian sighed softly. This is a peerless scourge. I didn't expect that when the 8 of us joined forces and crushed every inch of his power of the soul into dregs, he could still come back to life and stir up trouble again. Then, how can we kill him? Yin Yang asked cautiously. The soul demon comes and goes without a trace. Thousands of miles away, within a breath's reach, ever-changing, it's difficult to find his true form, invulnerable to blades and spears, invulnerable to water and fire. If there's danger, he'll be gone in a flash. The vast heaven and earth, the white clouds and the breeze, as long as he comes into contact with the various manifestations of heaven and earth, he can disappear with the momentum and be hard to find again. Yin Yang thought as Dong Qitian spoke. When Dong Qitian finished, Yin Yang's expression became very subtle and very pleasant. It was wonderful. Thousands of miles away, within a breath's reach, ever-changing, it's difficult to find his true form, invulnerable to blades and spears, invulnerable to water and fire. If there's danger, he'll be gone in a flash. The vast heaven and earth, the white clouds and breeze, the various manifestations of heaven and earth. Was this talking about the soul demon, or Yin Yang? Chapter 1200. How come the more I listen, the more guilty I feel, Yin Yang muttered in his heart. It looks like I'll have to be more careful in the future. I shouldn't use my manifestation powers if I can. What if I meet a hothead of the older generation who thinks I'm the soul demon and kills me? That would be a great injustice. Dong Qitian's expression was solemn as he said, when the soul demon was wreaking havoc, this old man and the soul demon had fought hundreds of times. I can be said to be experienced and not weaker than anyone. Although I was only a beginner-level Supreme Saint at the time, I could suppress the soul demon and gain the upper hand. Victory was in my grasp. But against the soul demon, the so-called upper hand is useless. The so-called victory is in your grasp, but it's just wishful thinking. It's not realistic at all because no matter how many times you break it, the other party can recover in the next moment, and it'll be back to its best state. Even if this old man dies of exhaustion on the spot, I still can't kill him. If the battle drags on until the end, who knows who will be the one to escape? Dong Qitian laughed bitterly. The soul demon's real combat power is not as good as mine, but this old man would rather fight a saint than fight the soul demon alone. You must know that even against a saint, the odds of winning are slim, but at least it's a real battle. Fighting the soul demon, on the other hand, is like a man fighting against the sky and the air in a frenzy. The feeling of having no place to exert force, especially when you have no place to exert force from the beginning to the end, is really crushing. Yin Yang coughed and said, "If so, how did you trap him and inflict heavy damage on him back then?" According to Senior's description of the soul demon's characteristics, a siege is even more difficult to work. Instead, there will be negligence. Dong Qitian snorted, a thoughtful look in his eyes as he said, "Back then, the unexpected rise of the soul demon almost led to another tragedy of the human race after the ultimate battle between humans and demons. However, we were unable to form a sufficient threat to the soul demon. In the end, it was Sacred Heart Palace's Lei Qianli who invited everyone to join in the great cause to eradicate the soul demon. Originally, as you said, the soul demon's attribute is special, so a siege is often more difficult to be effective. However, Lei Qianli's cultivation of Azure Sky Thunder is one of the few magical cultivation methods that can make the power of the soul stagnate for a moment, and it is also the only means that can form an effective restraint on the soul demon. In addition, Fierce Gale Saint's temporary control of the wind further constitutes a hindrance. Taking advantage of the short gap when Deep Earth Saint turned the ground under his feet into leakless steel, he sealed the soul demon into a special isolated space constructed by the combination of water and fire of Soft Water Saint and Fiery Saint's water and fire, which is extremely opposite but compatible with each other. Then, Jade Sword and Golden Saber Saint attacked and strangled, as well as the complete removal of traces of my soul. In the beginning, Lei Qianli came to me. At that time, his cultivation base was inferior to mine, so he suggested that I be the leader and join in the righteous cause. Dong Qitian slowly recounted in frustration, in that battle, Jade Sword and Golden Saber joined forces to attack the Soul Divine sect and successfully lured the soul demon out. After a fierce battle, the battle formation gradually moved to the triangular Stormy Gorge. Because the triangular Stormy Gorge is filled with clouds and mist all year round, the soul demon can move freely in that place. It is almost the best battlefield for him, so he did not care much about the change of location. Instead, he enjoyed it. What he didn't know was that the dual masters of water and fire had already spent all their cultivation in a specific place to form a special space where water and fire converged, which was the nemesis of his incarnation. Then, the rest of us worked together to further seal the 4 dimensions of heaven and earth, leaving no loopholes. Then, the thunder and lightning struck and paralyzed his body. Only then was his spirit locked in the form of flesh. I took the opportunity to strike and crushed his brain and heart. Then, the moment I stopped, the Jade Sword and the Golden Saber joined hands and cut the soul demon into more than 20,000 pieces of flesh. I was still not at ease. It was not until all the pieces were smashed and made sure that every drop of blood and every piece of flesh had been refined by the thunder and lightning that the situation ended. After that, Lei Qianli accumulated merits and was promoted to become the Grand Elder of the Sacred Heart Palace. The others then went their separate ways and went their separate ways. It was on the way back that I encountered. Sigh, I was imprisoned for 4,300 years, Dong Qitian chuckled bitterly. I didn't expect that after 4,300 years, for the first time in the martial world, I would actually encounter the most disgusting opponent of that year. Indeed, the affairs of the world are like a game of chess, unpredictable. Yin Yang was dumbfounded for a long time. Wasn't such a method a little too much? The confluence of water and fire to build an extremely opposite special space? Was there such a possibility? But if there was, it was indeed the greatest nemesis of wind and cloud. Then, the thunder would strike the earth, the saber and the sword would strike together, and the thunder would forge every inch of flesh and blood. It seemed like, this kind of method could be used for reference on himself, okay? Moreover, if this method was really used on him, he was afraid that he would not even be able to survive the first step, because he did not have the terrifying recovery ability of Soul Demon. He would definitely disappear directly in the first place. Yun-yang shuddered. He could not think about this, it was too scary. He was timid, so there was no need to scare him like this. That's not right. Since the assassination was set up so carefully, how could the Soul Demon still have a chance to come back from the dead? This? Yun-yang asked cautiously. Dong Qitian's eyes were full of heaviness. The previous assassination was all perfectly realized without any loopholes, especially the last thunder forging. As long as we follow the established practice, even if the Soul Demon had 1,000 lives, it would be hard for him to escape death. Fierce Gale Saint Master, Thick Earth Saint Master, Soft Water Saint Master, and Raging Fire Saint Master were here to set up the foundation of the killing trap. They didn't participate in the fatal attack, so there's nothing wrong with them. The joint attack of Jade Sword Saint and Golden Saber Saint completely shattered the Soul Demon's spiritual body, so the two of them are not much of a suspect. The subsequent sweep of the traces of the soul. Logically speaking, this step is the easiest step to make mistakes, but the one who carried out this step is this old man with the highest cultivation base among the 8. I am confident that there are no mistakes. What's more, when I swept with all my might, Jade Sword and Golden Saber confirmed it again and again, completely eliminating the possibility of negligence. Then, there is only the last step. Thunder forging. Dong Qitian murmured, the only possibility for the Soul Demon to survive is that there is a flaw in the last step of the thunder forging process, where the soul and spirit are destroyed. Logically speaking, the Soul Demon that is still alive must have something to do with Lei Qianli. Dong Qitian frowned. But Lei Qianli was the one who initiated the whole plan. Who would have a problem? He shouldn't have a problem. Yun-yang smiled and said, regarding this junior has a little insight that may be able to solve senior's doubts. In the Sacred Heart Palace, there must have been more than one person competing for the position of Great Elder. After all, apart from the Temple Lord and the 2 Deputy Temple Lords, the Great Elder is the 4th most powerful person in the Sacred Heart Palace. I believe that such a high position, even in the entire bound of universe, can be considered a high-ranking position of honor. How could it not attract covetous eyes? If my guess is correct, there must have been several people competing for this position, and Lei Qianli did not have an advantage among the competitors. He may even have been a relatively weak party. Under such circumstances, Lei Qianli had no chance of winning. If he hadn't made a great contribution, he would have had no chance at all. May I ask Senior if this is the truth? Dong Qitian pondered and said, back then, the Great Elder of the Sacred Heart Palace was approaching the end of his life and had the intention of giving up his position to someone more capable. Regarding the Great Elder's vacancy, there were indeed several people who were qualified and willing to ascend to the position of Great Elder, but I'm not very clear about who exactly they were. Yin-yang was sensitive enough to notice that Dong Qitian's eyes flickered a little when he said this, but since Dong Qitian was unwilling to elaborate in detail, Yin-yang would only provoke each other and not help. Now, however, he knew that there was indeed something wrong with the Sacred Heart Palace's Lei Qianli. But as long as he could confirm this point, it was already a worthwhile trip. Senior, should we inform the Sacred Heart Palace about this? Yin-yang asked cautiously after some thought. Unexpectedly, Dong Qitian replied blankly, inform the Sacred Heart Palace for what? Yin-yang could not react in time and rolled his eyes. Old Master Dong Qitian, was indeed a martial arts fanatic of his generation. He was not the least bit worried about playing with people's minds. Now that we can basically confirm that there's something wrong with Lei Qianli, inform the Sacred Heart Palace to take precautions. It's better to be safe than sorry. After all, it involves the demon race, not just one family. Yin Yang muttered to himself. Do whatever you want. Dong Qitian was really not interested in this at all. To him, there was something wrong with Lei Qianli. It was simple, he could just kill him the next time they met. What other hidden dangers could there be if he was killed? What was the big deal? What was the point of spending so much effort and thinking about it? Wouldn't it be better to spend more time cultivating? Nothing in this world was more important than the path of cultivation. Dong Qitian did not want to think about anything other than martial cultivation, but Yun Yang could not. He had to consider the pros and cons of the future. Should he inform the current case? There were definitely benefits to informing, but there seemed to be disadvantages as well. There was a traitor hidden in the Sacred Heart Palace for many years. Did the current temple leader, Zhan Wufei, really not know? Was it a good thing or a bad thing to expose Lei Qianli? Yin Yang suppressed this thought in his heart. He would think about it again if there was a chance in the future and if he could use it. After all, Yin Yang might not even trust Zhan Wufei, the temple leader of the Sacred Heart Palace. He realized that there were too many strange things in the bound of universe. Who was real and who was fake, who was right and who was wrong, no one dared to say that they could really tell. Without a certain degree of understanding, even if one had the all-seeing eyes, how could one clearly see an old monster that had lived for tens of thousands of years? Even if Yun Yang had the reputation of supreme wit, he still did not have the confidence to do so. At this moment, Bai Bingxian had already stood up, quietly standing at the side with her 5 subordinates. Seeing that Yun Yang seemed to be deep in thought, she was very sensible not to disturb him. When she saw Yun Yang turn his head, she hurriedly bowed with joy. Thank you, sect leader Yun, for your help. At this moment, she really felt relaxed. The restraints on her body and the murderous intent that shone upon her life had been completely removed. This situation made her want to cry tears of joy. How many years had she been looking forward to this day? The day when her shackles were all gone. Previously, not to mention vindicating the elder ancestor and avenging her family, even her own life was in the hands of someone else. That kind of precarious pressure had put her in an atmosphere of despair at all times, tormenting her. Now that she had abruptly gotten rid of her shackles, she was overjoyed, but there was also a subtle sense of unreality. She was in a trance, as if she was dreaming. What are you thanking me for, Sai? Yin Yang sighed faintly about Bai Bingxian, with a faint hint of bitterness. He finally realized that his scheming methods were not completely useless in the bound of universe, but at least for many people, there was little room for them to use. For example, Old Fiend Hun. Yin Yang felt that he had Old Fiend Hun in the palm of his hand with his previous arrangements. This time, he had even brought Dong Qitian with him, confident that victory was in his grasp and the overall situation was within his grasp. However, even though he had the advantage of scheming against Old Fiend Hun, he was still almost defeated in one move. With the absolute gap in ability, no matter how good the arrangement was, no matter how perfect the planning was, it was still not enough and could only sigh helplessly. Another example was Dong Qitian. This boss's behavior pattern had always exceeded Yun Yang's estimation. He clearly knew that the failure of his plan to eliminate the demon in the past was due to someone with ulterior motives, and he had even locked onto someone with ulterior motives, but he had no intention of taking further action. At least in Yun Yang's opinion, this person was simply incomprehensible. There was also the matter of Bai Bingxian. At least for now, Yin Yang had never considered rescuing Bai Bingxian at this time. On the contrary, Bai Bingxian leaving with Soul Demon was the ideal situation that Yun Yang was looking forward to. All his arrangements for Bai Bingxian were to keep Bai Bingxian by Soul Demon's side. In the future, no matter what news there was or what Soul Demon did, he would know. This could maximize the role of an undercover agent. Now it was all right. As soon as Dong Qitian came forward, Soul Demon actually sent Bai Bingxian over, along with the one-stop service of lifting the ban. It was simply the best service with the best price-performance ratio. At least 10,000 divine beasts were galloping and roaring in Yun Yang's heart at this moment. What was this? It was such a casual move, but it had directly cut off a series of arrangements that he had made before and ended prematurely. Why did Senior Dong, as soon as you made your move, Soul Demon gave up Miss Bai and the others? Is it really just because of the gap in strength and the threat of Senior? Yun Yang asked curiously. Of course, there was also a lot of regret and frustration in this question. Dong Qitian scratched his head at Yun Yang's question. He really just had a sudden whim about this matter. His original intention of coming here and the subsequent changes still did not include this little cat demon. It was really just a lucky hit, a mistake with a mistake. Girl, who are you? Dong Qitian did not beat around the bush and asked directly. Bai Bingxian was smart and said, this junior is Bai Bingxian. My ancestor is the 9 Lives Cat King. Dong Qitian coughed and said, so, you're the descendant of the 9 Lives Cat. He looked up for a long time and said, so, you're the descendant of the 9 Lives Cat. He looked up at the sky for a long time and said, does Soul Demon often bleed you after he caught you? Does he want you to breathe to the moon according to the 9 Lives Cat's unique cultivation method every full moon night? Does he want to detect the progress of your cultivation method? Yes. Does he often ask you to kill? And to detect the turbulence of your soul after that? Yes. Has he ever pulled out your bones? Yes. Are you the only direct descendant of the 9 Lives Cat's bloodline now? Yes. Are you? Dong Qitian asked 7 or 8 questions in a row, and Bai Bingxian gave a direct affirmative answer without hesitation. Dong Qitian heaved a long sigh of relief and said, I see. It's really a stroke of luck, but it's just a coincidence. It's a good coincidence, too good a coincidence. Chapter 1201. Dong Qitian smiled. As the saying goes, a small clue reveals a big picture. This soul demon thinks that I've seen through his purpose. He doesn't want to bear the price of being seriously injured again. Naturally, he has to give up the biggest benefit in his hands. Otherwise, he's afraid that I won't let it go and cause more trouble. Yin Yang had vaguely guessed it, but he still asked, what do you mean by this, Senior? Can you explain in detail? To put it simply, this girl's identity is very remarkable. Although it's difficult for you to understand its importance and you can't use it, it's equivalent to a huge treasure for every powerhouse above the level of Saint Venerable. Yin Yang's expression changed, and he said in surprise, this junior has also probed this woman's body with his own spiritual power. Although I found some abnormalities, I didn't see anything more. What Senior says, it's already commendable that you can detect some abnormalities. It's very likely that her body hides the 9 Lives Demon Cat's path to reincarnation. The reason why Soul Demon captured her is that he noticed her abnormality and created all kinds of opportunities for her to make her cultivation base advance by leaps and bounds. With Old Demon Soul's experience, especially in the aspect of the soul, he only needs to observe the progress of her path of Tao to infer the 9 Lives Demon Cat's path to reincarnation. All Supreme Saint Venerable martial artists lack such opportunities. Especially demons like Soul Demon that aren't raised with flesh and blood, they're the most lacking. In Old Demon Soul's opinion, this old man and he haven't seen each other for thousands of years. Suddenly meeting here, and coming prepared, he obviously has an ulterior motive. However, he doesn't have anything worthy of my ambush at the moment. So he naturally thinks that I'm here for this little cat demon. Dong Qitian snorted. This soul demon is quite straightforward, giving up the little cat demon directly. At the same time, it's also to make me give up the idea of keeping him. Without the little cat demon as a burden, even if I go all out, I can't take his life. But he doesn't know that I don't need him anymore. Dong Qitian rolled his eyes, but the pride in his expression had already betrayed his current state of mind. Yin Yang, on the other hand, rolled his eyes, feeling disgusted as if he had been f***ked. It was just a guess, and you ruined my plan without any hesitation. Who would have thought that the key to breaking the deadlock was actually on by Bingxian, a seemingly insignificant and weak little cat demon. She's just a small chess piece in my plan, okay? I'm going to vomit blood, I'm really going to. Yunyang moaned weakly. Looking at the delighted and relaxed Bai Bingxian, Yunyang did not have the energy to retort. Sect leader Yun, what should we do next? I'll listen to you. Bai Bingxian said in a friendly manner. Bai Bingxuan's gratitude towards Yunyang, who had saved her from the abyss of suffering, was sincere. What to do? Yunyang swallowed his anger. What can I ask you to do? Do you think you're still worth anything now? First, you can't follow Soul Demon to provide me with information. Second, you can't break into the Sacred Heart Palace to provide me with information. Third, you can't return to the Demon Clan to inquire about information for me. Fourth, you are so weak. Fifth, you are still so stupid. Tell me, what can I make you do? What can I make you do? I'm also having a headache now. Can I bring you back to raise you? Yunyang, you can't ignore this Miss Bai. Why don't you bring her back to the residence? Dong Qitian said meaningfully. Yunyang grew angrier and angrier. Dong Qitian, old man Dong, are you sent by God to put me down? You can't bully me like this. I'll help her to the end. Miss Bai has contributed a lot to the success of this plan. How can I give up helping her? Yunyang said without hesitation. Although he did not know what this Miss Bai was used for, let alone what her specialty was and what kind of effect she could play if he really brought her back, Yunyang knew from Dong Qitian's expression that she must be of great use. Miss Bai, if you have nowhere else to go now, why don't you settle down in my residence of 9 Supremes first? Yunyang asked. Bai Bingxuan's face was a little excited, but also a little perturbed. She asked hesitantly with a little inferiority, can I? Of course you can. My humble residence welcomes you with your presence. It's my honor. Bai Bingxian was unusually excited. Now that the situation was clear, they could not go back to their original lodgings. They did not even have a place to stay. It was rare for Yunyang to open the door for them, so they could just go on their way empty-handed. Bai Bingxian knew a lot about Yunyang. She knew that Yunyang was the newly promoted Supreme of the Residence of 9 Supremes, a sect with a middle-class celestial luck banner. A sect with a middle-class celestial luck banner was an extremely rare and valuable place to go. In terms of living environment, it was not much inferior to the place where she was born, the 9 Lives Cat's old home before it declined. As for the other 5 cat demons, 3 women and 2 men, they were also extremely excited when they heard the news. Speaking of which, Bai Bingxian was a direct descendant of the 9 Lives demon cat and a person of high status, but that was then and this was now. Since a long time before she was born, the 9 Lives cat clan had already lost its former glory. To be more precise, it should be in a gradual decline with each passing day. The situation was getting more and more difficult with each passing day. When Bai Bingxian was born, the situation was even worse. As Miss Bai grew up little by little, the so-called glory of the clan became yesterday's daylily, like frozen water. Almost every day, there were people in the clan who were unlucky and died. By the time she was about to reach adulthood, there was almost nothing left of the clan's foundation. The lineage of the 9 Lives cat began to flee, hoping to win a chance of survival and buffer, but in the end, it could be said that the first half of Bai Bingxuan's life was immersed in the bitterness brewed by tragedy. From birth, she began to be careful, not even daring to cry loudly. When she grew up anxiously, she began to flee from the place of her birth. When she finally escaped, she fell into the hands of the demon soul. Along the way, she did not seem to have had a few days of peace. Now, even though Yunyang's residence of 9 Supremes was only a middle-class celestial luck banner sect and was not in the eyes of the descendants of the orthodox demon clans, for Bai Bingxian, having such a place to settle down was enough to make her feel grateful and moved to tears. In fact, even if Yunyang only provided her with a small valley with nothing, as long as she could live freely and steadily, Bai Bingxian would be satisfied. However, when she arrived at the residence of 9 Supremes and felt the actual condition of the place, Bai Bingxian was dumbstruck. Is this a paradise beyond the world? A paradise beyond the heavens? Meow, meow, meow. In her excitement, the little cat demon not only exposed the innate language of the cat clan, but also a pair of furry little ears appeared on her head, flickering and trembling. Her big round eyes were full of disbelief and indescribable. Looking at the spiritual herbs all over the mountain and feeling the refreshing spiritual qi of heaven and earth, Bai Bingxian could not help but tear up. After a meal, she went to the small courtyard assigned to her and lay on the soft bed, feeling the rich spiritual qi that was increasing her cultivation base even though she was just lying down. She sighed almost instinctively. This is the life of an immortal. Even if it kills me, I'm not leaving either. Bai Bingxian secretly made up her mind. For this wish, she could not care less about what price she had to pay. Senior Dong, why do you want to bring this little cat demon back? Yin Yang sighed and looked at Dong Qitian in dissatisfaction. On the way back, he finally understood what kind of girl Bai Bingxian was. When they had first met, Yin Yang had thought that she was a beauty that was as cold as an iceberg. She exuded an unapproachable aloofness from head to toe. In addition to her decisive judgment of the situation when they first met, Yin Yang had a good impression of her. Now, however, this is obviously a lazy cat. No, a bunch of lazy cats. What's the use? With Yin Yang's shrewdness, he should not have spoken to Dong Qitian directly with his emotions on his face. As soon as the 6 cat demons, led by Bai Bingxian, entered the residence of 9 Supremes, they behaved rather poorly, as if their bones had been extracted. Collectively, they became lazy, and even when they walked, there was a sense of awkwardness, as if they did not want to move at all. If there was something to do, they would lie down. If there was nothing to do, they would lie down. That was secondary. After all, they were cultivators, so they should at least have daily cultivation. However, these cats did not have any intention of cultivating at all. As for the word hard work that the residents of 9 Supremes revered the most, the cat demons' performance in this aspect was still passable. They were roaring loudly every day, "You must work hard. You must work hard. We must work hard to restore the supreme glory of the 9 Lives Demon Cat Clan." Shouting 17 to 18 times a day was considered a minimum. The problem, however, was that this was the only thing they worked hard for the day. Other than shouting 17 to 18 times, they spent the rest of their time eating, sleeping, and roaming the entire residence of 9 Supremes' territory happily and leisurely. Yin Yang had even suspected that these cat demons were putting on a show. After all, they were an alien race, living under someone else's roof. It was not strange for them to put up some smokescreen, using it to erase the estrangement between themselves and the residents of 9 Supremes. Until one day, Yin Yang saw with his own eyes that Bai Bingxian, the direct descendant of the 9 Lives demon cat who claimed to have a blood feud, actually chased the butterfly from the back of the mountain to the front of the mountain, then to the square, all the way to the residence of 9 Supremes' main peak, all the way to the residence of 9 Supremes' main peak. If it were not for the sky turning dark and Bai Bingxian returning to eat and rest, who knew how long this farce would have lasted? If this was still an act, Yin Yang would willingly be deceived without a word of complaint, even if he was deceived for the rest of his life. Faced with such a scene, Yin Yang, who had always adhered to the principle of a vigorous gentleman, could only feel like he had been ked. It was the kind that kept repeating itself, from morning to night, working from sunrise to sunset. You have to get used to it. Dong Qitian lectured earnestly. Lazy cat, these 2 words have been around since the beginning of time. Do you think it's called for nothing? If it weren't for the 9 Lives demon cat's lazy nature, do you think the position of demon emperor would have fallen to someone else? He was so lazy that when his companions who entered the Tao at the same time became demon emperors, demon saints, and demon lords. The 9 Lives demon cat with the best aptitude in the beginning only managed to achieve the position of demon king and grand duke. The corners of Yun Yang's lips twitched. The 9 Lives Demon Cat clan is famous for being lazy. This is nothing new. Dong Chitian said, take the matter of being oppressed by the entire demon clan for example. If it were other demon clans, they would have long planned to escape, but the demon cat clan would rather endure it day by day, muddling through day by day, until they're almost exhausted and can't take it anymore. Only then do they respond. The cat clan will feel sleepy as long as they're full. They'll feel sleepy when the sun shines on them, and it's only logical that they'll feel sleepy when it's dark. They'll also feel sleepy after standing for a long time, and they'll definitely feel sleepy after a battle. They won't stop if they don't sleep for a few days and nights. Yun Yang was speechless. Is there a time when they're not sleepy? There is. Dong Chitian answered. Oh. May I ask when? When they're playing, Dong Chitian said, they'll never feel sleepy when they're playing. For example, when the female cat was catching the butterfly, wasn't she full of energy? In the end, she was still in high spirits, wasn't she? Yin Yang was speechless for a long time before he said, you're asking me to take back such a lazy cat? Is it really because of old Demon Hun? Dong Chitian smiled faintly and said, of course it's not just that. This girl is still very useful. Remember, she's very useful. He paused and said, let's not talk about the others. Let's talk about your whiteys. Until now, they only know how to fight with their innate talent, don't they? Yin Yang's eyes shone brightly when he heard that, realization rising in his heart. Yes, this Bai Bingxian may not be good in other aspects, but she's obviously an excellent teacher for the whiteys. Even if you exclude training the whiteys, that girl is still useful. You'll have to go to the demon clan in the future no matter what. Besides, it's hard to avoid the ultimate battle between humans and the demon clan, so you must plan ahead. As for Bai Bingxian, the information she knows now is already enough for you to dominate the demon clan. Even if the 9 Lives Demon Cat clan has fallen to the point where only one of them is left alive, they were once the top nobility of the demon clan after all. They have their own secrets. Dong Chitian said, haven't you thought about this before? This isn't like you usually. Against the alien races, knowing more about them would be a great help. For example, what is the weakness of the Fox clan? What is the weakness of the Bear clan? Does the Panther clan have any shortcomings? Is there anything they can't do? I believe Bai Bingxian must have some understanding of these. With her impression of the demon clan, I believe she'll be more than happy to spill everything she knows. Dong Chitian said meaningfully, also, the 9 Lives Cat ancestor might not really be dead. If the 9 Lives Cat ancestor reappears in the bound of universe one day, don't you know what kind of commotion he'll cause? Just the fact that you're taking care of his descendants is enough to earn you a handsome reward. Listening to Dong Chitian's words, Yun Yang could not help pondering and nodded after a while. Indeed, the older the ginger, the spicier it was. Even with Yun Yang's intelligence, willpower, and experience, it was inevitable that he would be blinded by a single leaf. Dong Chitian, on the other hand, had taught Yun Yang an enlightening lesson with his experience and wisdom. The next day, Bai Bingxian had just woken up and was about to check on the few flowers that had just bloomed in her yard. What if more butterflies came? Unexpectedly, when she opened the door, she was surprised to see 5 furry little things rolling around in the yard. As far as the eye could see, the 5 little things were completely snow-white. Only one of them was slightly bigger, while the other 4 were snowballs the size of wool balls. They rolled around on the grass and chased after each other. They were having so much fun that they forgot everything else. These are, Bai Bingxian's eyes widened. These are 5 little kittens? They're so cute. Bai Bingxian approached them carefully, afraid that she would scare the 5 adorable little fellows. She tried her best to be as gentle as possible. They're little kittens that haven't transformed yet. Meow, they're so cute, meow. Chapter 1202. When she walked closer, she was surprised to find that her 5 subordinates were already standing on the side, their expressions strange. What is it? Bai Bingxian asked. Miss, take a closer look. Look at the 5 cats. Bai Bingxian turned her head to take a closer look. After identifying them several times, she realized something and could not help but widen her eyes in shock. This isn't our cats, meow. One of the ladies looked serious. The bigger one is a cat, but it's a mystical cat and not a mystical beast. It should be a low-level mystical beast, a lightning cat. Other than moving extremely fast, there's nothing special about this mystical beast. The other 4 are also mystical beasts, but they're eclipse panthers, not cats. Bai Bingxian swallowed and said, but, they're so cute. Mystical beasts and mystical beasts are fundamentally different. Once a demonic beast awakens its intelligence, it will have the embryonic form of a demon. As long as it goes through a certain level of cultivation, it will be able to absorb the essence of heaven and earth, and it will have a chance to transform into a human. It will be able to speak and cultivate a more profound cultivation technique. As for mystical beasts, to reach this step, they have to go through the purest form of rebirth before they can transform. Of course, once the mystical beast transforms successfully, compared to the mystical beasts, it's not only invincible among the same level, it can even fight 10 at once. 4 of these 5 mystical beasts, the eclipse panthers, have gained intelligence and hope of transforming. Only their bones are still there, their mystical bodies are still there, and their bloodline hasn't changed. That's why they're stuck at the current high-level mystical beasts, and it's hard for them to break through again. Bai Bingxian said, how can I not know what you're talking about? What I'm really puzzled about now is how did they appear here? I sent them here. Yin Yang walked in from the door with a friendly smile. The whiteys have nothing to do anyway, so why don't I send them to play with you? It's considered making the best use of them. Bai Bingxian had just escaped a disaster and was naturally lazy, but she was not stupid. She said, what do you mean, Leader Yun? Yin Yang said, I'm just thinking that my whiteys' fighting style is still based on their innate ability to attack. Isn't it too monotonous? If Lady Bai is willing to help, Bai Bingxian frowned and fell into deep thought. Yin Yang said, these whiteys are my treasures. There was no need to say it clearly. As long as you treat my baby well, I will not treat you unfairly. But on the other hand, if you can't make my whitey better, what's the point of me keeping you around? Bai Bingxian was silent for a while. Then, she said, Sect Master Yun Rong Bing, Bingxian can teach them our 9 Lives Demon Cat Clan's cultivation technique. But I can't guarantee that it will be able to help them change their bloodline. Yun Yang felt relieved and said softly, this is already very good. I don't have the intention to demand more. Everything is a matter of fate. Following Yun Yang's command, the 5 whiteys lined up neatly in a row, squatting on the ground and looking up at him. Her adorable and well-behaved appearance made people's hearts melt. Regardless of whether it was a man or a woman, it was difficult for anyone to avoid this. The 5 of you will cultivate with Sister Bai from now on, understand? Remember not to cause trouble. Yin Yang said sternly. Meow. The 5 whiteys spoke at the same time, their voices soft and tender, captivating and lingering. Bai Bingxian felt as if her heart had melted. When she looked at the 5 whiteys again, her eyes narrowed. At this moment, Yun Yang's voice rang in her ears, Lady Bai, I won't say much. Our abilities are still very weak now, but in the future, if Lady Bai wants to return to the demon race and reclaim the glory of your ancestors. Although it's not convenient for me to make an appearance, these 5 whiteys can help Lady Bai. Bai Bingxian's heart skipped a beat. He turned abruptly to look at Yun Yang and said quietly, don't worry, Sect Leader Yun. I'll do my best to help the 5 whiteys advance smoothly and transcend. Yun Yang nodded and said, thank you very much. The whiteys had unexpectedly found a teacher who could train them in a cultivation method that suited their cultivation. Yun Yang's worries were greatly relieved. Even if Bai Bingxian was still lazy, as long as the 5 whiteys were here, he believed that she would not be the same as before no matter what. The truth was as Yun Yang had expected. Bai Bingxian's regret deepened with each passing day. The 5 whiteys were smart, there was no doubt about it. It was evident from the fact that they had developed intelligence before they could transform. However, they were a little too smart. Bai Bingxian had just taught them how to cultivate step by step, and the 5 whiteys had already begun to cultivate on their own. Just as Bai Bingxian breathed a sigh of relief, her blanket was suddenly lifted when she was sleeping soundly the next morning. The 5 whiteys charged into her room. They sprawled over her head, chest, neck, and stomach. Meow, meow, meow. Meow, 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 wonderful, get up quickly, come with us to cultivate. We're going to cultivate. We've learned what you taught us yesterday, take a look. We've learned what we learned yesterday, what are we going to learn today? Don't sleep anymore, get up quickly. Bai Bingxuan's hair was being pulled by Big Whitey, her ears were being pulled by Whitey 2, her chest was being pulled by Whitey 3, her pants were being pulled by Whitey 4, and Whitey 5 was sitting on her stomach, scratching and scratching. If it were Yun Yang, cough, if it were any other man, he would not be able to do anything to such a lazy lady as long as he did not treat her violently. However, this was not a problem for the 5 whiteys. They could just move their hands and feet and greet her with their mouths. How could they not get up? Bai Bingxian wriggled on the bed like a snake, refusing to open her eyes. She growled in agony, let me sleep for a while, let me sleep for a while more. Just a while. Just a while, however, the 5 whiteys were not willing to give up. They continued to attack and grope her, greeting her to their heart's content. Facing the 5 seemingly small but actually powerful whiteys, the stalemate only lasted for a short while before Bai Bingxuan's clothes were torn to shreds, revealing her naked body. Bai Bingxian clutched the tattered clothes on her. I'll get up, I'll get up. Stop tearing. Oh my God. I'm regretting it. Meow, meow, meow. The next day, Bai Bingxian wailed and begged for mercy, crawling up in agony. Her clothes were disheveled and she looked aggrieved. I surrender. I'm regretting it. Sect leader Yun, D**M*. You really have a way. You, fueled by an indescribably strong resentment, sect leader Yun, who had saved her from the abyss of suffering and given her a new lease on life, had become a D**M*. You, who grabbed my hair? Who grabbed my chest? Who grabbed my pants? Who grabbed my butt? Who grabbed me? Bai Bingxian looked fiercely at the 5 whiteys in front of her. Her eyes were no longer filled with love like 2 days ago. Children were cute, but mischievous children were extremely annoying. If there was anything more annoying than one mischievous child, it would be a bunch of mischievous children. And to Bai Bingxian, this cat demon, the 5 whiteys were extremely annoying and terrifying mischievous children. But strictly speaking, what the 5 whiteys were doing now could not be considered naughty children. The real naughty one was obviously Bai Bingxian. The 5 whiteys sat in a row, like 5 snow-white pom-poms. They raised their heads and stared at Bai Bingxian innocently. Meow, meow, meow. Bai Bingxian was furious. She shouted, meow. Meow, meow, meow. The 5 little fellows were stunned for a moment before they started rolling around. Meow. Bai Bingxian did not have the slightest desire to appreciate it. She was in so much pain that she wanted to die. After a while, she took out a brush and dipped it in ink. Come here, squat down. The 5 whiteys obediently lined up in a row. I can't recognize who you are, but I have my ways. Miss Bai laughed weirdly. She placed a black dot on one of the whiteys' heads, then another 2 dots, then 3, 4, and 5 dots. All of you, remember this. You can wake me up in the future, but you are not allowed to pull my hair, my clothes, or even under my blanket. If I find out anyone who breaks the rules in the future, they will be severely punished. I can recognize you now. After a day of training, Bai Bingxian went back to her room to sleep in exhaustion. The next morning, she was disturbed by the whiteys as usual. You. Let me see who you are. I will definitely punish you and let you understand what it means to respect your teachers. Bai Bingxian sat up and opened her eyes. She was immediately dumbfounded. The 5 whiteys were squatting on his blanket in a row as usual. However, the black dot on their heads had already disappeared. Furthermore, the lightning cat whiteys were physically different from the other 4 whiteys, so it was easy to recognize them. However, now, the 5 whiteys were all the same size. There was no difference in size at all. Looking closely, she realized that not only did they look the same, even their gazes were innocent. They were like quintuplets. Bai Bingxian fainted from anger. How could she forget that these 5 fellows were high-level mystical beasts? Although they could not speak as well as cultivate demonic cultivation skills as she did, their actual cultivation base might even be higher than hers. How could they not have a way to grow or shrink? You're not trying to kill me, are you? I won't do it, I won't do it. Bai Bingxian lay on the bed, her eyes listless. Damn whiteys. Damn Yunyang. Damn it, damn it. Bai Bingxian cursed incessantly. Even when she had assigned the whiteys to her 5 subordinates to supervise their training, the whiteys would still come to harass her every morning, punctual every day. You fellows are also a kind of cat. Why are you all working so hard? Don't you need to sleep? Bai Bingxian broke down completely. How could she know that Yunyang had always believed in self-improvement? His priority was to find friends. It was the same when he had befriended the demiurge Flawed 10, it was the same when he had rescued and befriended Dong Qitian. It was the same when he had taken in many children who had been abducted but still worked hard. The laziness of the cat race was the behavior he despised the most. As the saying went, everything resembled its owner. The 5 whiteys had been by Yunyang's side since they were born. How could they not work hard? Come to think of it, everyone around Yunyang, whether it was the residents of 9 Supremes now or when they were in Tianxian continent in the past, who among them did not work hard? The current situation of the residents of 9 Supremes was very different from the past. It was roughly divided into 3 areas, the smallest of which was reserved for Bai Bingxian to train the 5 whiteys. At the same time, it limited the range of movement of Bai Bingxian and her people. After all, the residence of 9 Supremes was not limited to the people of the residence of 9 Supremes. How could one be sure that there were no experienced people in the Phoenix Cry sect who could see through Bai Bingxian's background? This was a risk that could not be taken. Other than this small, almost negligible part, the rest of the areas were distributed in a 9-to-1 manner, with more than 90% of the area naturally belonging to the residents of 9 Supremes. The other side was where the Phoenix Cry sect taught its disciples, and the disciples of both sides were training hard. On the field, every day, there was a lively scene, one after another. The higher-ups of the Phoenix Cry sect were very satisfied with this situation. Although the disciples still looked at them coldly, it did not affect their desire to learn and improve. Everyone's cultivation progress was extremely fast, at least twice as fast as the disciples of the Phoenix Cry sect. Some top geniuses' cultivation speed was even more than twice the normal speed of the Phoenix Cry sect's disciples. It was a miracle. Even if the spiritual qi in the residence of 9 Supremes was unusually abundant, even more so than the headquarters of the Phoenix Cry sect, and even if these disciples were all gifted, there was no reason for them to improve so fast, was there? As time went on, the people of the Phoenix Cry sect gradually discovered the key to the difference. Not only was the progress of the disciples' cultivation faster than expected, but it seemed like his body was also becoming more relaxed and comfortable. The internal injuries that he had accumulated over the years in the martial world were actually getting better bit by bit, and were being healed in an appropriate manner. The residence of 9 Supremes is indeed a blessed place, much better than our sect. The 12 of them had already begun to think about whether they should find a reason to stay when they needed to go back to the academy. The disciples selected by the Phoenix Cry sect, on the other hand, were all complaining and sighing. The competition will begin in 10 days. How can we beat them with our current strength? Just thinking about it makes me feel bored. If we win, we'll become traitors. If we lose, we'll be even more humiliated. and we'll be blamed for not working hard enough. No matter what, we still have to try our best to win. Only when we win can Sect Leader Master see our efforts and our breakthrough in adversity, and he'll be willing to take us back. You're right. Practice, practice hard. Meanwhile, in the residence of 9 Supremes, Yun Xiaoxin and the others walked through the group of junior brothers with their hands clasped behind their back, their faces tense. There's still 10 more days before the tournament. You bear the honor of the residence of 9 Supremes. If you win, you'll come back as heroes, but if you lose... Think about it, which one of you can afford to lose face? We have to win even if we have to risk our lives. We have to win even if we have to die. We have to win no matter what. We have to win. If we win, we'll be rewarded. If we lose... He. The eldest senior sister's laughter was like a devil's. The group of disciples cultivated even harder. I'm going out for tea today. Yes, tea, so I'll update in advance. GT. Chapter 1203. Amidst such a heated atmosphere of competition, the residence of 9 Supremes had a visitor again. Outside the mountain gate, a big black bear covered in wounds walked up weakly and plopped down at the residence of 9 Supremes' door, moaning, "Is this the residence of 9 Supremes? Is anyone there? I'm here for Leader Yun." It was the black bear from the School of Imperial Beasts. Yin Yang was shocked when he saw the Bear King. What happened to you?" The black bear's cultivation base was not low. Even though Yin Yang's cultivation base had improved tremendously during this period of time, there was still a gap between him and the Bear King back then. At a glance, the Bear King seemed to have lost 90% of his life. His entire body was covered in cuts and bruises. Roughly, there were at least 700 to 800 of them. It was already a miracle that he could make it to the residence of 9 Supremes with such injuries. "I've come to seek refuge with you. I'm not leaving since I'm here." The black bear rolled his eyes and fainted right after he said this. Following that, the gigantic body fell to the ground, and with a loud boom, it actually smashed down a large tree beside it. "Carry him in." Without delay, Yin Yang quietly sent in a wisp of air of vitality and fed it 2 medicinal pills. Only then did he order his men to carry the black bear in. The mountain gate was so wide, but the black bear had to be turned sideways to enter. The gate did not seem to live up to its name anymore. This physique is really extraordinary. After a day and a night, the black bear finally regained consciousness. Yin Yang only knew the whole story after asking. It was done by someone from the School of Imperial Beasts? Yin Yang's eyes widened, disbelief written all over his face. No wonder there's bewitching incense, poison, and all sorts of peculiar medicinal ingredients in your body, causing you to lose a large amount of spiritual energy and diminish your ability. What happened? The Bear King was the guardian beast of the School of Imperial Beasts. What had happened? Although Black Bear had regained consciousness, he was still weak and dispirited. After returning from the competition, the conflict between me and those brats gradually escalated. In the end, when the sect asked me to do something, I just didn't go. It was also at that time that I broke the arms of 2 of the sect's elders, and from then on, all banners of flags and drums of war. Then, I had nothing to do for a long time. I wanted to come to the residence of 9 Supremes to find you, but thinking that I've been in the School of Imperial Beasts for so many years, I felt like old friends, especially during this period of time. The food prepared by that kid was far better than before, so it didn't sound good to mention the bear now, who knew that it was all a conspiracy. The so-called improvement of my meals was actually an opportunity for them to poison and drug my meals. Then, they mobilized the entire sect to kill me. The black bear's eyes were filled with hatred. Luckily, you gave me a stream of energy during the competition. I didn't use it, so I managed to keep my head clear. It was so close that I made it all the way to the residence of 9 Supremes. The black bear obviously did not know that he was already exhausted when he came to the residence of 9 Supremes. Moreover, his last breath of energy had dissipated when he came to the rescue. If it were not for Yun Yang's timely injection of vitality, he would have been completely drained and his soul would not have been able to recover. It's all right, it's all right. Since you're here now, you're completely safe, Yun Yang comforted him. The only thing you need to do now is to rest well. We'll talk about the rest after you've recovered. The black bear nodded weakly. What do you plan to do about the beast trainer sect? Do you have any thoughts of seeking revenge and justice in the future? Yin Yang paused and asked the black bear bluntly. The black bear tilted his head and began to ponder. After a long time, he said, "Forget it. It's all just a sin. If I really destroy his efforts and destroy the beast trainer sect, it'll be the same as erasing the first half of my life. It's better to leave some memories behind. In the future, we'll mind our own business. As long as they don't come looking for me, I won't go looking for trouble with them." After the black bear finished speaking, it went back to sleep. Yin Yang nodded and sighed softly. He did not expect the Black Bear King to be such a sentimental person, a sentimental bear. In all fairness, if the Black Bear King had asked for Yun Yang's help in his revenge, Yun Yang would have helped. However, he would never dare to treat the Black Bear King as one of his own. The Black Bear King and the Beast Trainers sect had a deep relationship and had been in the sect for many years. It was difficult to erase the ties between them. Although the people of the Beast Trainers sect had tried to kill the Black Bear King because he wanted to leave, the root cause was still the Black Bear King's abandonment of their ties. Yin Yang questioned himself. While he did not agree with the actions of the people of the Beast Trainers sect, it was difficult to criticize them based on their standpoint. Now that the Black Bear King had cast aside his gratitude and grudges and written off the vengeance that had killed him, he had reached his limit. Looking at the disappointment and bewilderment on this fellow's face, this matter would probably be a knot in the Black Bear King's heart that was difficult to unravel. However, Yin Yang had no way of unraveling it. There was probably no one in this world who could undo this knot for him. Let's recuperate first. Yin Yang thought about it for a long time. Emotions had always been a complicated thing. When it came to measuring a person's character and bottom line, one would usually start from emotions. Yin Yang asked himself, "I feel relieved that the Black Bear King has chosen to stop and not seek revenge, but do I feel a little disappointed as well?" However, if the Black Bear King had chosen revenge and bloodshed, would he be even more disappointed? Yin Yang asked himself, "How can I not be disappointed at a time like this?" After thinking for a long time, he sighed. There's no solution. However, can a loyal person only suffer losses? Yin Yang stood in the sky and thought for a long time. I've thought about this question for a long time as well. After a period of time, the disciples of the residents of Nine Supremes began to leave the sect in batches to roam the martial world and experience the mortal world. Those who remained in the sect would only become more diligent in their cultivation, not slacking off for even a moment. During this period of time, the Jianghu could be said to be in a state of peace. Even if there were occasional battles, they were just sporadic killings in the Jianghu, fighting for fame. There were rarely any large-scale battles. In spite of this, the troubles of the secular world still made the residents of Nine Supremes look more like a paradise, untainted and peaceful. Not too long ago, the General Commerce League had come again to discuss the matter of entering the spirit's grave with Yun Yang. The General Commerce League, who had successfully ascended to the upper-class celestial luck banners, seemed to be even wealthier than before. Conversely, their desire for the good stuff in the spirit's grave was still lingering. However, Yin Yang did not bring out anything good this time. There were only a few pieces of ethereal amethysts and a stream of air of vitality. However, this was enough for the General Commerce League. After confirming the next cooperation, the Commerce League hurriedly ended this round of transactions. They came and went in a hurry. After all, they had just been promoted to an upper-class sect. There were many things waiting to be done. It was already commendable that they could take a break from their busy schedule to come here. On this day, the people of the residents of Nine Supremes were cultivating enthusiastically as usual. A sudden sword chime startled the group. Clang! The sound could almost be heard throughout the mountains and valleys. The entire bound of universe could hear it. Everyone was shaken. More than 70% of the more than 10,000 disciples in the residence of 9 Supremes were swordsmen. At this moment, they could not help but feel shocked at the same time, for their swords had all left their scabbards at this very moment. They soared into the air simultaneously, emanating a chilling glint. Yin Yang was playing chess with Dong Qitian at the moment. When he heard the sound, he frowned and looked up. Dong Qitian's expression was unprecedentedly solemn as he said softly, "The King of Swords has come into being." The King of Swords? Yin Yang was puzzled by the title. There was no such title among the cultivation ranks, was there? Your second peak master. Supreme Sword, Shi Wuchen, right? Dong Qitian said, "It should be him. He's walked a path of swordsmanship that belongs entirely to him." The expression on Dong Qitian's face was a little complicated when he spoke. Yin Yang was overjoyed. At this moment, he could not care less about Dong Qitian's expression as he got up and was about to rush out. Don't be hasty. He's only found the path he should now. He hasn't really succeeded in cultivating it yet. Dong Qitian watched as the swords slowly descended from the sky and said faintly, "One day, when all the long swords come to greet him on their own like this, with the tips of the swords flying upward, forming the image of thousands of swords worshipping him as they soar into the sky, his swordsmanship can only be said to be accomplished. Only then will his swordsmanship cultivation come to an end and he can step into the world once more. If you go now, you'll only disturb him and distract him." Yin Yang stopped immediately and smiled sheepishly. "I see. Thank you for your guidance, Senior." This junior almost messed things up on impulse. Since the beginning of time, this old man has only heard of one person who has reached such a state. When he comprehended the sword, all the swords shot out at the same time. When he drew his sword, all the swords would greet him. Dong Qitian's face was full of emotion. "I wonder how far this supreme sword of yours can go. May I ask, Senior Dong, who is this sword sage?" "It's Wooden Sword Saint, Ci Hongqian." Dong Qitian's eyes were filled with admiration. Wooden Sword Saint, Ci Hongqian. What he cultivated from the beginning was to defend the world and protect all living beings in the world. As for Ci Hongqian, he's upright and outspoken, chivalrous and courageous. He's never killed anyone unjustly or wrongly in his entire life in the martial world. As the saying goes, the world owes me nothing, I have no regrets in the world. Yin Yang murmured, "The world owes me nothing, I have no regrets in the world." He could not help but let out a long sigh and said, "Senior Ci Hongqian's state of mind is amazing and unattainable. What I, Yin Yang, have pursued all my life is that in this world, others can owe me, but I don't owe anyone. As long as I have a clear conscience, that's enough. I've always boasted that I'm not weaker than others and have always been proud of myself. But now, compared to this Wooden Sword Saint, I'm far from it. The difference is like heaven and earth. It's because I think that others owe me, but I don't owe anyone. Deep down, I still care about what others owe me." Yin Yang said slowly, "My state of mind can't be considered complete when I have such thoughts." Dong Qitian said quietly, "Actually, with your age, it's already commendable that you can have such a state of mind. It's not bad. Someone like Wooden Sword Saint, who has a pure mind and a sense of defending the world, lives too tiresome. He'll never accept loss. Forever, he only wants to possess everything that's good and that he cares about. That's why he's destined to be more tired than you." May I ask, Senior, for Senior Ci Hongqian's state of mind to be so pure, he must have ascended to the peak of this world and become a legend of the sword? That's not the case. Wooden Sword Saint used this sword as his foundation back then, but he was still only at the honor level after 300 years. He couldn't improve for a very, very long time. It was only when he reached the end of his honor level lifespan that his thoughts became clear and he understood the truth of Tao's imperfections. Finally, he broke through the shackles and surpassed his own limits. He even changed the iron sword he carried with him to a wooden sword. His cultivation base only truly started from then on, advancing boldly and vigorously. Yin Yang's thoughts wandered as he asked, "May I ask where this accomplished swordsman, senior wooden sword saint, is now?" Dong Qitian said quietly, "If he hasn't stepped down, he's naturally still the master of the East Celestial Palace." The master of the East Celestial Palace. It's him? Yin Yang's heart skipped a beat. According to what Senior has said, as long as Tua walks his own path, his future achievements won't be inferior to Wooden Sword Saint. Dong Qitian did not speak for a long time. When Yin Yang thought that he would not answer the question, Dong Qitian said slowly, "That'll only be possible if Shi Wuchen can live until then. There are too many geniuses in the martial world who have died prematurely due to their path. Tua will definitely succeed." Yin Yang said firmly. On another day, the competition between residents of Nine Supremes and Phoenix Cry sect began again. Although it was said to be a competition between the two sects, in fact, it was only a competition between the disciples of residents of Nine Supremes. However, Yin Yang had still informed Phoenix Cry sect that it was still a competition between the two sections. Whether they would come or not was a matter for the higher-ups of Phoenix Cry sect. It did not matter even if they did not come, but they had to show proper etiquette. To Yin Yang's surprise, the higher-ups of Phoenix Cry sect probably wanted to test the progress of their disciples, so they really came with 2,000 disciples. The higher-ups of both sects did not intervene in the competition. Instead, Yun Xiuxin, Bai Yexing, and the others were the judges. After all, it was only a competition between disciples who had just entered the Tao. Whether it was the higher-ups of residents of Nine Supremes or Phoenix Cry sect, it was a waste of their talents to be the judges. This time, the competition was divided into 100 small arenas, and they took turns to fight. However, what made the Phoenix Cry sect lose face was that the Phoenix Cry sect only occupied one of the top 10 positions, and it was the 10th position. The environment is the same, the disciples are taught the same, and our cultivation method is even stronger than that of residents of Nine Supremes. Why did we still get such a result? With such questions and grievances, when the people of Phoenix Cry sect returned, they urged the disciples further on the original basis. What they did not know was that the disciples who were selected to join Phoenix Cry sect were even more depressed and murmured to themselves. As expected, we really can't compare with them. I knew these guys wouldn't do. They have led us astray and tired us out. Meanwhile, Yun Xiuxin and the others from residents of Nine Supremes were furious. The two questions in this chapter are the two questions that have troubled me for a long time. One is Bear King, and the other. Chapter 1204. What's going on? We've agreed to get all the top 10 places. Why did one of them slip away? What the hell are you guys doing? I'll triple the training later so that you'll remember it. You know what's good for you. And you, look over there. I'm talking to you. Don't think that you're amazing just because you got the first place this time. If you're defeated by someone else next time, I'll see where you can hide your face. A single glory never means eternity, do you know that? You, the one who got the second place this time, do you know that you're only one step away from the first place? Can't you work harder? If you can't get the first place next time, I'll beat you to death. The one over there, didn't you feel good about yourself before the competition? Didn't you boast about yourself? Why did you only get the 6th place? Let's see if you still dare to boast in the future. And you. Of course, they still have their shortcomings, but they've all defeated their opponents and won the ranking. What about you guys? A bunch of good-for-nothings. You've actually been defeated by someone else. It's not the residents of Nine Supremes masters teaching their disciples over there. Why did you lose? Why did you lose? Isn't it because you didn't work hard enough? Do you know that your defeat is a slap to the residents of Nine Supremes' face? It's a complete disgrace to our masters. This time, the last 100 people in the last place will have their monthly benefits deducted. Their monthly allowance will be deducted. If you can't improve your ranking next month, half a year will be deducted. 3 times in a row, 1 year will be deducted. 5 times in a row, you can forget about the sex resources for the rest of your life. The resources of the residents of 9 Supremes will never be given to trash with no perseverance, fighting spirit, and no progress. When Yun Xiaoxin announced the murderous reward and punishment system, the crowd fell into a dead silence. One could hear a pin drop. From now on, we'll follow this system. When the challenge tournament starts 3 months later, we'll make new rewards and punishments. Not to mention what senior sister Yun Xiaoxin had said, the punishment seemed a little too high, didn't it? Moreover, the coverage of the flames of anger was too wide. It seemed like there was no one to reward. At this moment, a bold boy shouted from below, "Eldest senior sister, you only mentioned how to punish those who fall behind. Those who don't work hard enough and don't want to improve should indeed be punished. There's nothing wrong with that, but why didn't you say anything about how to reward those who are in front? For example, how should they reward those who made great progress? What kind of explanation would there be for going from the top 10,000 to the top 10,000? Also, advancing 10 ranks and advancing 100 ranks shouldn't be treated the same, right? If there's no way to advance further, isn't that unreasonable?" Yun Xiaoxin's face turned pale. She was filled with anger because the result of the competition was not as expected, so she flew into a rage and blurted out many punishments without thinking about the rewards. Now that she was suddenly asked, she could not help but be at a loss for words. After a pause, she said angrily with a flushed face, "Of course there will be an explanation for these. We'll discuss it later, and when we come up with a specific plan, we'll announce it immediately." Hearing Yun Xiaoxin's words, the crowd's emotions surged at once. There are rewards and punishments, and since you've been punished so heavily, the corresponding reward must be very heavy as well. If not, it's unreasonable. Seeing that the situation had gone too far, Yun Xiaoxin and the other top 10 disciples went back and held a meeting for half the night. In the end, Sun Mingxiu spent the whole night writing out the specific rules of rewards and punishments. The first place of each competition would be rewarded handsomely. The top 10 in each competition would also be rewarded handsomely, but slightly lower than the first place. If the ranking of the later competition was changed, it would depend on the specific situation. For example, if one fell from the first place to the top 3, there would be no reward or punishment, but if one fell too much at once, such as falling out of the top 3, there would be a corresponding punishment, and so on. What Yun Xiaoxin said just now was simply what she blurted out without thinking. It had no reference value, so it was useless. If the second place could only improve to become the first place, and the first place could not fall back, and everyone could only advance but not retreat, wouldn't that be killing everyone? Under this rule, if one was originally in the top 10, as long as one moved forward, the original reward would be doubled, but if one fell out of the top 10, his original reward would be halved, and he would have to pay a certain amount of his own resources as a punishment. This rule was applied to all the disciples ranked in the top 100. Then, it was the top 300, top 500, top 1000, top 3000, top 5000, and so on. The rewards and punishments would be implemented in descending order. The next 5,000 disciples would not be rewarded or punished, and the status quo would be maintained. As for the last 4,000 disciples, all those who had improved their ranking in the previous competition would not be rewarded or punished, but those who hesitated or even regressed would be punished accordingly. The last 2,000 disciples would be punished. The last 500 disciples would be punished heavily. The last 100 disciples who were still in the last 100 for 3 consecutive months would be automatically replaced by the part-time disciples. It was an elimination mechanism. All in all, there were actually more than 20 pages of paper. Moreover, this was only the preliminary plan. It was far from being completely perfected. "Isn't this the same as asking me to write a book?" Sun Mingxiu smiled bitterly. The job naturally fell to Sun Mingxiu, Yu Qingheng, Bai Yexing, and a few others. As for Yun Xiaoxin, Hu Xiaofan, Lu Changman, Qing Yi, and the other disciples of the Central Peak, they had all given up. Although Yin Xiuxin's cultivation base was the best among all the disciples, when it came to internal and external affairs, as well as the management of the sect, she could only curse and perhaps beat people, but she really had no other abilities. Capable people do more work. Yin Yang, Luo Dajiang, and the others only watched from the sidelines, and no one said anything. Instead, it was Kong Luoyue who came to talk to Yin Yang in private. "What do you think, boss? I've never seen you specially train the disciples of the sect leader. Yin Xiuxin is recognized by all the disciples as the one who will inherit your mantle. If you don't train her carefully, how can she lead the mansion in the future?" Yin Yang smiled amiably and said, "Why do we need to nurture them specifically?" Kong Luoyue was speechless. Why should he be groomed? Did I not make myself clear enough just now? You're the leader of the residents of 9 Supremes, you're the leader. Don't you want to groom your successor to be the next leader? Wasn't this a logical extension? Luoyue, I think you have a misunderstanding about my thoughts, or perhaps a blind spot. My disciple may not necessarily be the next leader of the residents of 9 Supremes. Let the children recommend the people they trust, and let them find their own position in the sect. This is the long-term development of a sect. Yin Yang chuckled, a sect leader's disciple doesn't necessarily have to be the sect leader. It's best to do the job that suits them the most. Chapter 1205. Xiuxin and the others are not suitable to take over the position of sect leader at all. It's one thing for them to have formidable strength, but with their current temperament and accomplishment, they can only serve as roaming generals, guardians, elders, and so on. At most, it's the limit of their ability to stay in charge of a region, and that's only after they've experienced many things and seen many things in the world. Yin Yang said faintly. On the contrary, Yixing, Qingheng, and Mingxiu all have the potential in this area. Their ability to look at the big picture alone has already left Xiuxin and the others far behind. Yin Yang smiled and said, "So, we don't have to care about these things. Let them do what they want." Yin Yang's smile grew deeper and deeper. The residence of 9 Supremes is not my residence of 9 Supremes, nor is it the sect leaders. It's everyone's residence of 9 Supremes, and it's their residence of 9 Supremes too. Many years later, we old fellows will be long gone. The future is theirs. Why should we dictate their path? Their future path is not our future path. Why do we need to decide it? When Kong Luoyue left, he was inexplicably shaken. Yin Yang's way of managing the sect and his attitude towards power had astounded him. While other sects were fighting openly and covertly for the position of sect leader, the residence of 9 Supremes was using such a method to subtly cultivate the next generation. Kong Luoyue felt that he was utterly convinced and prostrated himself in admiration. Then, he thought about what Yin Yang had said, when the disciples can perform their respective duties and do well in all aspects, we, the seniors, should give up all the power and let them perform to the fullest. We're the founders of the residence of 9 Supremes. The purpose of our existence is to protect and escort this sect. There's no need to think too much about other things. In this world, strength is still the most important thing. The strongest fist is the hard truth. It's the most important thing to improve our abilities as soon as possible. Kong Luoyue left quickly, obviously wanting to inform the others of Yin Yang's thoughts as soon as possible. A month later, the residents of 9 Supremes held a grand wedding. After more than a decade of love, Luo Dajiang and Jiang Luoluo, the pair of lovers, were finally together. All the upper echelons of the Phoenix Christ sect were present, and so were the upper echelons of the General Commerce League. There were also many nearby sects who came to congratulate them. Even the few sects that belonged to the middle-grade celestial luck banners had sent people to congratulate them, and their cultivation base and status in their sects were not low. The chief of internal affairs of the Sacred Heart Palace, Hui Yunfeng, had also sent his eldest grandson to congratulate him. He had also brought a congratulatory gift from the Sacred Heart Palace. He also sent a message to Yun Yang, Temple Master Zhang said to invite Supreme Cloud to visit the Sacred Heart Palace more often when you're free. Since we met that day, it's a pity that we didn't meet sooner. It's best to keep in touch. Yin Yang agreed with a bitter smile. How was this an invitation? It was clearly saying, when are you going to do what I asked you to do? Other than Yin Yang's pained expression, the entire residence of 9 Supremes was draped in glowing colors, jubilant and joyous. The disciples were all beaming with joy, and all kinds of fine wine and delicacies were brought to them like flowing water. How could the residence of 9 Supremes not make a grand celebration of the first joyous event since its establishment? On the first day alone, the residence of 9 Supremes had consumed more than 34,000 caddies of fine wine. Luo Dajiang and Jiang Luoluo, the protagonists of the day, had never dreamed that their wedding would be so grand. Before this, the most perfect situation they had imagined was that they would elope successfully, hide in a remote mountain village, and spend the rest of their lives. Who would have thought that the wedding could actually be held in such a grand and unprecedented manner? It was unparalleled in the world, and it was a bustling scene rarely seen since ancient times. Gan Tianyan and Jiang Luoluo's parents were sitting in the most prominent positions, their faces beaming like flowers and their eyes full of joy. After bowing to heaven and earth and their parents, it was time for the couple to bow to each other. Just as Luo Dajiang and Jiang Luoluo stood up and were about to bow, Tai Qingsong, Ping Xiaoyi, and the others suddenly jeered, "Say a few words, say a few words." Following the banter between the residents of 9 Supremes' upper echelons, thousands of disciples also jeered, "Master, Mistress, say a few words. Senior Uncle, say a few words. You must say a few words." In the end, there were tens of thousands of people shouting at the same time, like a tsunami. Luo Dajiang, who was muscular and tall in a bright red auspicious outfit, seemed a little overwhelmed with joy as he said, "It seems like I have to say a few words." Jiang Luoluo, who was usually gracious and unrestrained, was unprecedentedly restrained as she said bashfully, "Then say a few words quickly." "Do you want me to say a few words?" Luo Dajiang cleared his throat and stood up. Just as he was about to speak, he paused and stood on a high stool. He was tall to begin with, and now that he was standing on a high spot, he was as lofty as a mountain. "Today is my and Luoluo's wedding day. You want to make fun of me and make me say a few words? Fine, I'll say them, but what should I say?" Luo Dajiang's voice rang out like a bronze bell. "I don't want to say pretentious words on a wedding day, and I won't say them. Words of gratitude are even more meaningless. It's all thanks to my brother that Luoluo and I can come this far. I, Luo Dajiang, will remember this favor. I'll only say one thing. I'm very happy and satisfied in the residence of 9 Supremes, and I'm willing to guard the residence of 9 Supremes for the rest of my life. This is my home, the home of everyone in this world. Also, you fellows who want me to say something. You know I'm not talkative, but you still want to force me to do something beyond my abilities. From tomorrow on, all disciples of the residence of 9 Supremes will have their training increased by 5 times. I'll supervise it myself, and this is the price for making you laugh at me. Alright, I'm done. That's all." Immediately, there were wails below. "Master, no. Senior Uncle, no, Senior Uncle, please don't." Luo Dajiang turned a deaf ear to them. He jumped down laughing and fell to his knees in front of Jiang Luoluo. Circulating his mystical qi, he said loudly, "Luoluo, thank you for marrying me. Today, with heaven and earth as my witness, I'll be good to you for the rest of my life." His voice was so loud that it echoed in the sky like a thunderclap, reaching everyone's ears clearly. Jiang Luoluo's eyes were red. "Fool, who else can I marry if not you? Is there a need to swear such a heavy oath?" What Luo Dajiang had just sworn was a heavenly Tao oath. The moment the couple bowed to each other, it was also the moment when the heavenly Tao oath struck. The oath is granted. It was as if heaven and earth were also witnessing this marriage. The cheers were thunderous and deafening again. It was as if tens of thousands of people were shouting, their voices shaking the sky. After the couple bowed to each other 3 times, the residence of Nine Supreme's leader, who was the master of ceremonies, shouted, "Send them to the bridal chamber." Then, nearly 20,000 people shouted together, "Send them to the bridal chamber." Deafening cheers and whistles soared into the sky, echoing endlessly and ceaselessly. "We'll have a fat baby tomorrow," Yunxiu shouted as her heart raced. The crowd was stunned. She was still a child after all, not even knowing how to make fun of someone. "Let's drink." Yin Yang raised his goblet. "The mountain is sealed today, no entry or exit allowed. Everyone, drink to your heart's content. We won't go home until we're drunk, we won't go home until we're drunk. The residents of Nine Supremes will have enough fine wine and beds today." Strange cries rose into the sky as the aroma of wine permeated the air. It was destined to be a sleepless night, a night of drunkenness. Ping Xiaoyi and Guanuanyang were up to no good, eavesdropping, but were caught by Luo Dajiang and chased them out on the spot. Luo Dajiang was the bridegroom today, so his reputation was the residence of Nine Supreme's reputation. It could not be tarnished nor could it be injured. Both of them could only defend and not fight back the entire time. Even though it was 2 against 1, they were still beaten up badly. After they were beaten up by Luo Dajiang, they were beaten up by the Phoenix Cry sex maiden family led by Gan Tianyan. They were chased all over the mountain, crying for help everywhere. The situation was extremely miserable. Not only did Yun Yang, Tai Qingsang, Kong Luoyue, and the others not lend a helping hand, they clapped and watched the show, adding fuel to the fire as they drank. "Beat them up hard. Don't show mercy, don't leave us any face." All in all, it was a joyous night. 3 days later, Yin Yang summoned all the residents of Nine Supreme's upper echelons for a meeting. It was almost time to go out, so he had to arrange everything properly. The disciples can go out in batches after half a year. The original inner sect disciples will go out in batches from now on. The 9 peak masters will also go out in batches of 3, 3, 4. It's necessary to train one's judgment and experience when roaming the martial world. All those who are outside, prepare the sect's communication tool. If anything happens, ask for help immediately. Those who don't return for 2 months will be treated as dead. Once the situation is confirmed, send out a large number of people immediately, either to rescue or to take revenge. Elder Dong, please take care of me when I'm not in the sect. If there are matters to attend to, come back early. The residents of Nine Supremes can no longer lack you, a stabilizing force. Dong Qitian smiled. I'll go out for half a month or 10 days in the future. This period of time is more than enough for me to travel all over the 7 seas and 9 states. It's all up to you, Elder Mingxiu. Yes, Elder Dong. When you're free, you can visit Miss Bai and check on the progress of the White East cultivation. Yes. Luoyue. Yes. You and Ruojuan are in charge of liaising with the Phoenix Cry sect. If there's anything, deal with it in time. Luo Dajiang and his wife will assist by the side. All right. When Shi Wuchen comes out of seclusion, tell him that I've asked him to roam the martial world and that he shouldn't blindly shut himself in. The edge of a sword should be sharpened. Waiting won't work. All right. Little E, Nuanyang. Yes. Both of you, choose your disciples according to your will. Focus on concealment and assassination that you're best at. However, the disciples from your sect are not allowed to go on missions when you think they're not mature enough. Avoid accidents as much as possible. Yes. Duo. Yes. Little Fatty stood up hurriedly. If anyone from the General Commerce League comes while I'm away, you'll be in charge of liaising with them. Set a date for the next meeting, no less than a month apart. Then, get Dajiang and the others to inform me as soon as possible. The General Commerce League's line must not be broken. That's not it. Those old brothers who really read my book won't mind, but there are some who won't understand that I'm only looking at the number of chapters. GT. Chapter 1206. Understood, completely understood. Little Fatty agreed very readily. His face was still twitching from time to time. He glanced at Dong Qitian with some fear and shuddered again. During this period of time, Little Fatty's cultivation base had improved rapidly under Dong Qitian's special training and was about to advance to the pinnacle of first-tier Saint King. However, the price he had to pay was that he had lost almost 60% of his fat. As a result, his originally chubby face now had some wrinkles on it. "Boss, are you going out?" "Yes, I'm going out." "Is it convenient for you to reveal where I'm going?" "Not at all." Faced with Yun Yang's direct reply, everyone was speechless for a moment. How straightforward. After the assignment, Yun Yang, dressed in his fluttering purple robe as usual, strolled out of the field where the disciples cultivated as if he was on a sightseeing tour, as if he was on a patrol. Everywhere he passed, the disciples all bowed in an orderly manner, and they were extremely respectful. Yun Yang went all the way out of the residence of 9 Supreme's mountain gate. After walking for dozens of miles and making sure that there was no one around, he slipped into the side of the road and disappeared without a trace. After a long time, 2 figures appeared behind him. The 2 of them revealed themselves and looked ahead suspiciously. Where did he go? Didn't see him? Did anyone else find out? There were people watching from all directions, including high up in the sky, but none of the dozen of them had found out. Oh no, if his lordship finds out, we're really unlucky this time. We've been waiting here for so long, and we've finally seen Leader Yun come out. How could he just disappear in the blink of an eye? What kind of cultivation method is this? It's so strange. The few people hiding in the dark gathered together for a discussion, then dispersed and disappeared quickly. Their movement techniques were also extremely mysterious. It was just that their figures had just disappeared, and they were still in the same open space. Dong Qitian and Yun Yang's figures quietly appeared. They've gone far. Senior, do you know which path these people are from? The only thing I can be sure of is that they shouldn't be under Soul Demon. Dong Qitian spoke with certainty. When the Soul Sect was destroyed, there were very few fish that escaped the net. Most of the subordinates of the Soul Demon, even if they were not Soul Demons, would still have some of the exclusive power of the Soul Demon. Whether it was human or demon, there would be no exception. That was the innate talent of the Soul Demon, and it was absolutely difficult to imitate or eliminate. However, these people clearly don't have such a mark on them. At the very least, it means that they haven't come into contact with old demon soul. Dong Qitian turned to look at Yun Yang and asked, "But why are you stopping me from taking these people down?" Yun Yang smiled faintly and said, "Because I don't want to be fooled. These people have been lying in ambush outside the residence of 9 Supremes since a long time ago, waiting for me to appear. Although they think that they've done it discreetly, how can they really not leave a single trace? Therefore, it's almost inevitable that they'll be discovered by us. In other words, these people were most likely sent by the people behind them to test me. Even if it's not a probe, those who are sent out like this are definitely not important people. Even if they are captured, they will hardly be of any use. Instead, they will alert the enemy and increase the number of variables." Yin Yang said, "So, it's better to keep them alive first." The corners of Dong Qitian's lips twitched. "Actually, people like you are what annoy me the most when I roam the martial world. It's obviously a very, very simple matter, but you people have to make it more complicated than the heavens. You plot, and people like me will fall into your trap if I'm not careful. It's really not satisfying at all. Can't you just do something to your heart's content?" Yin Yang laughed and said, "I'd rather use my wits than my strength. Why must I use my fists for something that can be solved with my brain?" Dong Qitian retorted angrily, "Then how do you expect people without brains to live?" "Pfft, who are you calling brainless?" Then, he asked again, "Are you really going?" "Of course I'm going. As the saying goes, those who are separated for a long time must be united for a long time, and those who are united for a long time must part. The relationship between the human and the demon race has been stable for a long time. Now that the chaos has reignited, it's destined that there will be a war. I'll go and take a look first. Besides, I'm still under the Sacred Heart Palace's command. If I don't go after this mission that Zhang Wufei has given me, there will be trouble in the future. Yin Yang smiled. I have nothing better to do, so I'll take this opportunity to go and take a look. I'll settle this matter. There was another personal reason that Yin Yang did not mention. Yin Yang was extremely dissatisfied with the progress of his current cultivation base. It was simply too slow. His mystical qi cultivation base was advancing steadily, and he was currently at the advanced level of first level Royal Saint, about to enter the pinnacle level. Such progress was, of course, not slow. On the other hand, the progress of the endless divine art seemed to have stagnated recently, with no progress to be made. The advancement of the endless divine art required a large amount of karmic qi. Previously, the residents of 9 Supremes had worked together to kill the human middleman, which was considered a huge profit. However, there were limited human middlemen in the bound of universe, and the higher the level of the middleman, the harder it was to kill. Although the residents of 9 Supreme's ability was advancing at a tremendous pace, its actual ability had yet to enter the ranks of the top sects, and it really could not afford to offend the hidden major human middleman forces. Recently, the bound of universe's martial world had been very peaceful as well. It was difficult to encounter a situation where one could engage in wanton slaughter. Yin Yang estimated that the endless divine art would require at least 300,000 points of karmic qi to advance to the next stage. The difference was considerable. If he were to stop at full accumulation, it would be difficult to collect it in 8 to 10 years. If that was the case, he might as well go and take a look at the demon race and try his luck. If I can't kill here, I'll go kill the demon race. That should work, right? Perhaps I'll gain what I lose. Dong Qitian sighed. Go. You're smart anyway, so you'll be fine no matter where you go. It must be someone else who's in trouble. Then, he reminded Yin Yang, if you're really in danger, you must crush the spiritual jade slip I gave you. Cultivation base is the most important thing in the path of martial arts, but you can only talk about the future if you're still alive. Yin Yang laughed and agreed. With a flick of his sleeves, he soared into the sky and disappeared quietly. In the residence of 9 Supremes, Yin Yang's legend did not stop. Instead, a new chapter was added because the residents of 9 Supremes had recently gained a Hall of God's armament. As the name suggested, since it was the Divine Weapon Pavilion, it was not surprising that the weapons stored within were all divine weapons. What was truly shocking was the number of divine weapons stored within the Divine Weapon Pavilion. It could be said that the number of divine weapons within the Divine Weapon Pavilion was mass-produced. There was not a single one of the 18 types of divine weapons missing, and there were at least 100 of each type. Chapter 1207. This meant that there were more than 1,800 weapons in the Pavilion of Mystical Arms, and each of them was an upper-class weapon of superior quality. This information was too shocking. Apart from the unusually rich spiritual qi and the large number of talented disciples, the residents of 9 Supremes had another piece of news that could shake the entire bound of universe, an unbelievable number of mystical weapons. To the major sects that owned the celestial luck banners, although the residents of 9 Supremes had quickly climbed to the top of the lower-class celestial luck banners and even replaced the last place of the middle-class celestial luck banners as soon as the battle began, they still believed that the residence of 9 Supremes was just lucky and that its foundation was inevitably lacking. However, the truth proved that the residence of 9 Supremes' foundation was not only sufficient, it was so abundant that it made people's hair stand on end. The higher-ups of the Phoenix Christ sect, who were its neighbors, had felt it again and again. Not only was the residence of 9 Supremes unimaginably rich in spiritual energy, the disciples were all talented and outstanding, and even the supporting resources were excellent, which made people jealous and envious. So many mystical weapons were all listed in the Pavilion of Mystical Arms for the disciples to fight for. For example, the one who occupied first place for half a year in the tournament of 10,000 or the disciple who contributed a lot to the sect could enter and collect a weapon that suited him. The mystical weapons in the Pavilion of Mystical Arms were truly worthy of the name. The higher-ups of the Phoenix Cry sect had seen it with their own eyes. Every mystical weapon hidden in the Pavilion of Mystical Arms could become a sought-after item in the highest auction, even if it could not trigger a catastrophe in the martial arts world. All 1,800 weapons were the same. As long as one met the conditions, one could have such weapons. How many sects in the world could imitate such a practice? The Phoenix Cry sect knew that it could not do it. If it was only 3 to 5 weapons, it could still do it if the sect emptied its inventory, but more than 1,000 or even 2,000 mystical weapons, the thought of it sent chills down their spines. Could it be that Yun Yang, a child of his age, was actually a genius blacksmith who had never been seen before? Otherwise, how could he be so generous? The weapons in the Pavilion of Mystical Arms were naturally not forged by Yun Yang, but he had asked Emmy to make them. In fact, Emmy did not put much effort into those mystical weapons, and they were not top-notch weapons made by Yun Yang. However, compared to the weapons outside, even the legendary weapons and mystical weapons that circulated in the continent, they were not inferior. After all, they were produced by Emmy, and the materials used were rare metals and rare treasures of heaven and earth, so their quality could not be low even if they wanted to. It was the norm to be able to cut through metal like it was mud and to shatter gold and jade. Most importantly, the weapons that were nurtured by Emmy were already filled with spiritual air even though it was only a small taste. This meant that if a weapon master could be compatible with them, the weapons would have the chance to develop spirituality and transform into supreme divine weapons that could grow alongside their masters. Especially after Yun Xiuxin exchanged for a famous sword, the entire residence of 9 Supremes was boiling. All disciples' eyes were shining with greed of mystical weapons. Who wouldn't like such a weapon? One must know that the residence of 9 Supremes had a written rule that no matter who was inside or outside the sect, even if they were the disciples trained by the Phoenix Cry sect, as long as they could be the champion of the tournament of 10,000 for half a year, they would get one. Phoenix Cry sect's initially gloomy atmosphere was lifted immediately. As for the Demiurge Flawed 10 and the others, they were more relaxed. It was not that they did not care, but because each of them already had a mystical weapon of a higher quality in their hands. In fact, they even had more than one. Take Ping Xiaoyi and Guan Nuanyang for example. Both of them were adept in the art of assassination and carried many items with them. Sects below the Celestial Luck Banner level might not be able to afford them even if they went bankrupt if they were to go bankrupt. Shi Wuchen was the only exception. Firstly, he had not come out of his closed-door cultivation, and secondly, his situation was different. Supreme Sword had his own way of the sword. The sword used by such a person must be custom-made and would never be a common sword. Moreover, Shi Wuchen's Triatom sword had already been strengthened once, so he was not in a hurry to upgrade it. Yin Yang might as well put it aside and tailor it for him later. Along the way, Yin Yang deeply felt the fundamental difference between the Bound of Universe and Tianxian continent. The martial world's turmoil in the Bound of Universe was as natural as Tianxian continents, but the murderous intent in the martial world was obviously much lesser than in Tianxian continent. It was probably due to the strict rules set by the Tianxian continent's founder. The restraining effect on the martial world was so great that few dared to go against it. Basically, those who walked the martial world rarely sought trouble. Occasionally, he would see some honor-level martial artists, but most of them were entering and exiting the forests, searching for spiritual herbs, training, or capturing mystical beasts. They had different goals, but they went their own way. There was rarely any friction or estrangement. The major cities they saw along the way were quiet and peaceful. The common people lived in peace and contentment. Regardless of whether they had cultivation or not, they all lived their lives quietly. Those who had cultivation here were not just ordinary cultivators. Even those at the Venerable Realm, Saint Realm, and even Saint King Realm were like commoners without cultivation. They lived a quiet and peaceful life, working at sunrise and resting at sunset. To be fair, Yin Yang was rather envious of such a lifestyle. If the Tianxian continent could be like this, why would there be so many wars and tragedies to be avoided? Yet, Yin Yang knew that it was impossible. There was a fundamental difference between the two places. The peace and tranquility of the bound of universe were all built on an absolute foundation of power. The almighty person who founded the bound of universe had single-handedly suppressed the entire world and conquered the bound of universe. No one dared to defy him. It was also because of his unparalleled power that he had directly set the rules of this world. Anyone who did not follow the rules would be struck down by lightning. It was precisely because of the existence of those rules and the threat of lightning punishment that no one dared to violate them, resulting in the current peaceful atmosphere. If the Tianxian continent could be like this as well, Yin Yang would have to reach such a level and set a similar rule for the Tianxian continent. Otherwise, how could the Tianxian continent enjoy such peace and tranquility? Suddenly, a thought came to Yin Yang. For me, this step can be said to be so far away that it's hard to reach the shore. Yin Yang pondered with a serious gaze. The bound of universe's master back then really had an indescribable and indelible deep affection for the bound of universe. However, who was this bound of universe's master? But there were no records at all, not even a trace of a word or two. Chapter 1208. Everyone knew that this was the rule set by Lord Monarch, but no one knew who Lord Monarch was, what his name was, or what he looked like. No one had the slightest idea of who he was. Tens of thousands of miles passed in a blink of an eye as they headed southeast. The number of people gradually decreased, and the number of trees gradually increased. Trees that had been growing for hundreds or even thousands of years could be seen everywhere. Correspondingly, the number of mystical beasts along the way increased as well. However, what surprised Yin Yang was that not only was there a clear division between mystical beasts and mystical beasts, they were also irreconcilable. There were endless battles between mystical beasts in the few huge forests that they had passed by along the way. The scale of the battle between the mystical beasts left Yin Yang, a veteran of the battlefield who had seen blood and gore, speechless. It was no longer a simple battle of hordes, but mountains and seas. Moreover, it was an extreme battle that came wave after wave, with no fear of death. Under normal circumstances, both sides would fight to the point where both sides were heavily injured before ceasing their banners and ceasing their drums and withdrawing their troops. The mystical beasts were not afraid of death, and the mystical beasts fought with all their might as well. However, most of the mystical beasts chose to retreat, while the mystical beasts followed suit and recuperated. Both sides fell into a temporary period of peace, entering a period of recuperation before the next great battle. On this day, a dense forest appeared before Yin Yang. This was the boundary of Tiannan. Looking up, Yin Yang saw that the forest in front of him was unusually vast, like he had never seen before, as if there was no end to it. As Yin Yang thought about it, he soared thousands of feet into the air. Looking down at the forest from this position, he still could not see the end of the forest. At this moment, the forest gave Yin Yang the impression that it was the only forest left in the world. There is actually a forest that occupies such a vast area in this world. If I didn't see it with my own eyes, I wouldn't have believed it. Yin Yang exclaimed in his heart. Do not enter a forest when you are in it. This was a saying that was accepted by the martial world. This was because the larger the forest, the more powerful the mystical beasts would usually occupy it. Under such circumstances, such a location had practically become a natural place for high-grade dark beasts and demon beasts to take root and reproduce, and there were very few exceptions. Yin Yang understood this, of course. Therefore, he stood by the edge of the forest and looked at the forest that had turned dark and gloomy several feet in. He hesitated for a long time, wanting to turn into a cloud and fly straight in, but somehow, there seemed to be an invisible force that urged him to go in and take a look, to see what was going on. The forest in front of him. The sparse forest in the distance gradually extended over, becoming denser and denser. However, the depth of the sparse forest seemed to be at least 1,000 miles. Upon closer inspection, there were still some traces of human beings. For example, the knife mark on the tree and the axe mark on the other side were obviously caused by chopping firewood. However, such traces became rarer the further in one went. After all, normal adventurers would never dare to enter a place like the vast forest in front of them. Reaching the nearby area was probably their limit. Just in terms of geographical location, this is the only way to reach the Blood Soul Mountain Forbidden Area. Why is this a place that must be passed through? There shouldn't be such a huge forest in a place that must be passed through between the two realms. Yin Yang mumbled in his heart, this is obviously a dangerous place, but why do I still feel that I have to go in? What is it that has attracted me here? Could there be some powerful presence inside that is calling me in with a special method? Or could it be that some sort of force is affecting my state of mind? Yin Yang had always been a cautious person. Once he thought of this, he was shocked and quickly retreated tens of thousands of feet away. He found a relatively spacious place and carefully cultivated the art of frozen heart, checking his entire body from head to toe. This included deific consciousness, mystical chi, endless force, and even the divine edge. Everything was checked from head to toe, and Emmy was asked to check again from a third party's perspective. Emmy was displeased. There's no problem at all, why do you want me to make this trip? What are you trying to do? Don't you know that I, Lord Emmy, am very busy now? Where would I find the time to do this? Looking at the hundreds of acres of herb farm in his deific consciousness space, Emmy felt a sense of accomplishment. With so many elixirs, as long as they take shape in a few more days, there will be a huge amount of life energy for me to absorb. There's no problem, there's no external force to tempt me, but I keep feeling that there's something here that needs me to go in. Yin Yang frowned as he pondered, why is that? There were always some legends in the martial world that spiritual items would choose their masters. When one arrived at a place, there would be some sort of telepathy. Following the telepathy, one would then be able to find some rare treasure of heaven and earth, whether it was in the bound of universe or the Tianxian continent. There were too many such stories. However, Yin Yang had his doubts about this. How many people were born in this world every day? How many would die on this day? Who would be the fated one then? It was hard to say. Usually, such situations only depended on the quality of the treasure, whether it was good or bad. Treasures had a certain level of spirituality, it was true, but it was rare for a treasure's spirituality to choose its master. Instead, it would use its own energy to exude an aura that could tempt one's heart, luring them over. However, it was hard to say what kind of person would be lured over, and what would happen after that was even harder to say. Perhaps one would be sucked dry by the treasure after being lured over. This possibility was not an exaggeration, it was the highest possibility. Life was not a legend, nor was it a myth or a legend. Not everyone was the main character. Yin Yang calmed himself down and carefully confirmed his current state again. He pressed a few medicinal pills under his tongue and connected his deific consciousness with Emmy. Only then did he cast his wind form, turning invisible and drifting slowly into the dense forest, almost following Emmy's steps. His speed could be said to be the lowest he had ever been since he cultivated the wind form. He kept his eyes and ears alert at all times, he would flee at top speed if anything went wrong. Through the void, a certain someone had observed his careful actions and commented, I've seen many children of destiny, but this is the first time I've seen one who's so cautious and afraid of death. It's truly an eye-opener, someone beside him said, but he still went in, didn't he? The person snorted and said, if he was in front of me, I'd most likely slap him to death just by looking at his cowardly look. Is he still a man? The person beside him snorted coldly. You can slap him to death even though we're separated by space. Why don't you try? All talk and no action, are you still a man? The person snorted again and cursed under his breath before he stopped talking. The youth dressed in white beside him guffawed maliciously, baring his fangs and brandishing his claws without a hint of decency. One chapter could have been published, wouldn't it be too much to split it into 3? Chapter 1209. Yin Yang had only advanced a few hundred feet when he suddenly heard the rustling of the bushes beside him. With a slap of his palm, the bushes buzzed with activity immediately. As the wind from his palm swept past, loud noises reverberated in the air. Yin Yang looked towards the source of the sound and saw a large silver-white snake that was as thick as a water bucket scampering away in a panic. Then, there was movement on his left. A spider the size of a millstone flew out from between two trees with a swoosh. Rustling sounds could be heard beneath his feet. Golden ants that were at least the size of his feet covered the ground that was at least a few hundred feet in circumference. There were at least tens of thousands of them. As they flew in all directions, it was like a receding yellow tide. Yin Yang was speechless. *CK, there are too many of them. Isn't it just average? I only wanted to take a look, why are there so many of them? Moreover, these were all mystical beasts. There were no ordinary wild beasts or insects at all. Following Yin Yang's advance, he startled countless mystical beasts of all sizes along the way. Yin Yang saw that there were no less than hundreds of thousands of them. There were those that flew in the sky, those that ran on the ground, and those that crawled in the soil. There was everything that one could think of, nothing was too strange. About 300 miles in, the surroundings grew darker. The sky could no longer be seen when Yin Yang lifted his head. Just as Yin Yang was about to launch another palm strike to check out his surroundings, he saw a new sign. With a strange rumble from the ground, the thick layer of withered leaves surged up as large, silver-white ants leaped out of the ground. The corners of Yin Yang's lips twitched. Were these still ants? This was clearly a rabbit, okay? Each of these ants was slightly bigger than an average rabbit. Compared to the whiteys' original size, 5 whiteys added together might not even be as big as one of these ants. As soon as the ants came out, they began to emit a strange hissing sound. As the sound spread, the ground within a radius of several hundred feet began to churn. The ground was like the waves of the sea, rolling endlessly. After a while, more and more silvery white ants came out. Just like before, they kept spreading out, and more ants appeared. In the end, the ground was covered with silvery white ants, boundless and borderless, with no end in sight. The most terrible thing was that after these ants drilled out from the ground, they didn't move again. They just stood quietly on the withered leaves, their cold eyes looking left and right, their almost 2 feet long antennae swaying back and forth. The hundreds of beasts at the front even raised their front antennae, and their hind legs were obviously accumulating power. Impressively, he had already assumed an offensive stance and was ready to strike at any time. Yin Yang was dumbstruck. Are they going to fight? Isn't this ant a little too ferocious? Yin Yang grew more cautious, hiding his presence as much as he could. Only then did he manage to shake off this bunch of ants that looked like battle maniacs and continued to move forward. Individually, these ants were only second-level mystical beasts, no matter how big they were. With Yin Yang's current cultivation base, he could kill hundreds of them effortlessly with a wave of his hand. However, according to Yin Yang's judgment, although these giants were not of a high level and were only mystical beasts at the periphery of the forest, there was a high chance that they were the overlords of this area. There was no other reason for this, their numbers were just too many, like an ocean. Thousands and tens of thousands of them were mere fractions to the ants, insignificant. Based on the movement just now, at least hundreds of thousands of ants had appeared. The total number of ants that had gathered here could very well be more than 10 million. Perhaps even more. Faced with such a large number of species, even 9th-level mystical beasts or higher-leveled mystical beasts would not simply come and provoke them. It was just like how an ant was insignificant in front of an elephant, but a colony of ants that exceeded a certain scale could devour an elephant. In many cases, quantitative change was enough to influence qualitative change. However, this extremely large number of giant ants was only the overlord of this land. In other words, they were the gatekeepers of this forest. From this point onward, Yin Yang could no longer find any traces of humans who had entered the place as he continued forward. Those ants were basically the most solid fortress that blocked all traces of humans here. No one could take a single step forward. From Yin Yang's perspective, there should not be many in the bound of universe who had the ability to break through the blockade of these ants and reach the forest safely. It would have to be at least 2 levels higher than Yin Yang's current level to have any hope. Along the way, Yin Yang could see ghastly white skeletons everywhere he went. There was also a faint demonic air lingering in the air. These were, of course, the remains of demonic beasts. This was not surprising. Too many demons had perished here in the past, and there was no lack of highly skilled ones among them. It was normal for their remains to have remnants of demonic air. However, what caught Yin Yang's attention was something else. Some trees that looked old and as thick as 7 to 8 people hugging each other had all been broken without exception. Yin Yang had not paid much attention at first, but along the way, he had seen many such trees within a radius of several hundred feet. Some of them had been broken while the others were still intact. Some of them had not even been damaged after walking for dozens of miles. The difference was obvious. Looking at the withered trees that had long lost their vitality after being broken, Yin Yang frowned and pondered. He could not figure it out for a long time. It was only when he realized that the broken trees were covered in bite marks that he understood. Demonic beasts might follow their instincts to pluck the young leaves for food, but they would rarely target the trees themselves. Since these trees were in a similar state, then these broken trees must have been deliberately broken by the mystical beasts. Even if he had figured this out, the mystery was still unsolved. In fact, the clouds of doubt were even thicker. What was the reason for the mystical beasts to do this? Yin Yang pulled out his saber and dug out the roots of one of the trees that had not completely withered. After careful examination, he realized that the tree was already decayed and could not be saved. However, there was still a faint demonic air lingering in its roots. So these trees have the chance to become demons because they have been around for a long time. Yin Yang's gaze was cautious. This means that when the mystical beasts patrol the forest, they have to get rid of these trees as soon as they see them. For some reason, Yin Yang suddenly felt sympathy for the mystical beasts in this forest. The forest was originally the mystical beasts' paradise. With more trees, the mystical beasts could be better concealed and formed a natural barrier and cultivation ground for the mystical beasts. On the one hand, the mystical beasts here needed the lush trees to maintain their reproduction, but on the other hand, they were afraid that the trees would grow too lush and become a threat to themselves. It was truly a dilemma, a difficult balance to strike. After some time, the mystical beasts on the periphery were left far behind. Yin Yang could vaguely feel that he was about to reach the center of this dense forest. Unexpectedly, there was not a single mystical beast in this area. It was eerily quiet. Chapter 12:10. Yin Yang was not surprised at all, for his attention had been attracted by another harvest. The heaven and earth treasures that grew in this area were far more abundant than those in front of him, and they were arranged rather densely. As Yin Yang walked along the way, he had only casually collected them along the way and had already stored hundreds of them into his deific consciousness space. More than 90% of these harvests were items that were tens of thousands of years old, while the lowest quality ones were 7,000 to 8,000 years old. It was quite a bountiful harvest. Later on, Yin Yang no longer collected those spiritual herbs that were 5,000 to 6,000 years old that were hard to find in the outside world. It was all because they were no longer to his liking. How extravagant! Emmy, who was in his deific consciousness space, cried out in joy. It did not expect the surprise to come so soon. Suddenly, a strong gust of wind blew above his head. Yin Yang was stunned. Looking around, he saw many flying mystical beasts gathering in his direction from all directions. There were huge mystical cranes with a wingspan of 400 to 500 feet, gigantic goshawks, and colorful gigantic peacocks. Yin Yang even saw a large flock of golden eagles, as well as many other types of flying mystical beasts. Yin Yang recognized some of them, but there were also many that he did not know. They flew south in groups at an incredible speed. After a while, banging sounds could be heard from the other side of the forest. It was obvious that a large number of mystical beasts were sprinting towards him for some unknown reason. From the sound of the ground getting closer, it was not difficult to guess that the incoming beasts were exceptionally large beasts. Yin Yang could not help but be shocked. The many mystical beasts in the sky and on the ground were obviously gathering towards the same place. Something big seems to have happened. Otherwise, why would there be such a commotion? Yin Yang wanted to find out what was going on, so he increased his speed by a third more. After sprinting for no less than 3,000 miles, a loud rumble came from the front. Although it was far away, the new frequent and concentrated sounds of collisions were audible. Shrill screams rose and fell in succession, often sounding out in waves. They lasted for a long time and rarely stopped. Another few dozen kilometers ahead, the sound grew louder and louder. Countless Xian beasts could already be seen charging towards a place where a cloud of smoke was rising, charging in. The shrill cries of eagles rang out as hundreds of golden eagles swooped down in a neat formation in the sky. What followed was a deafening explosion that drowned out all other noises. While Yin Yang felt deafened, he could also feel the ground beneath his feet shaking violently. However, this shock was nothing compared to the shock in his heart. Those golden eagles arrived together, yet they immediately chose to rush down and self-destruct. Why were they so resolute? This, however, an even more terrifying scene followed. After the golden eagle, many other condors also followed suit and rushed down, and then the crane, batch after batch. Countless enormous flying profound beasts charged forward in a fearless manner as they self-detonated and died, using their very lives to detonate themselves to the limit of their power. Yin Yang was inexplicably shaken. He could clearly see that when these flying mystical beasts charged down, their eyes were gleaming with the determination to die, but there was also a hint of reluctance. It was an indescribably tragic sight. However, they still charged down without hesitation, using their flesh and blood to turn into the most brilliant fireworks to kill the enemy. Enemy? Where was the enemy? Or rather, what was the target of these flying mystical beasts? He did not seem to see it. Yin Yang floated another 7,000 feet forward unwillingly and looked as far as he could. Finally, he saw that there was a door hidden in the air on the empty ground. It was hundreds of feet tall and 1,000 feet wide. Countless strange-looking demonic beasts were madly rushing out of the door. The point of contention was the inside and the outside of the door. One side wanted to charge out with all its might, while the other side wanted to stop the other party by risking their lives, killing every beast that came out. Even if they were not strong enough, they would forcefully stop the other party's attack by self-destructing, blowing up most of the beasts that were about to charge out and ensuring that they did not lose, Yin Yang pondered. The door was dark and seemed to be connected to another world. Could it be the realm of demonic beasts? At this time, there were a dozen or so extremely sturdy high-level Xian beasts at the forefront. They were clad in golden armor and had crowns on their heads. They were fully deserving of the title of the strongest combat force on the side of the Xian beasts. Just a casual punch or kick from them would cause the roar of mountains and the roar of tsunamis. Behind them, there was a large group of Xian beasts taking turns to attack. The mystical beasts gave their all, even going as far as to self-destruct. The power of the attack was immense, enough to shake the heaven and earth. There was no doubt that the mystical beasts in the door could not come out for the time being, but no matter how ferocious the attack was, there would come a time when it would end. Not only were the number of beasts that surged out of the door massive, their individual abilities were not weak either. The combination of quantity and quality increased exponentially. Yin Yang realized that some of the beasts that surged out now already possessed the ability of a Saint King. Furthermore, there would be one or two stronger beasts that were almost at the level of a Saint Emperor joining the battle every quarter of an hour, causing the balance between the two sides to be even more unbalanced. It was also at this time that the cruelest time came. The king-level combat force of the mystical beasts had been at the front line all along, so their combat force had been depleted. Both sides' actual abilities were about the same. Now that one side was not at full strength while the other side had rested for a long time and even had the advantage of sneak attacks, it was no longer an easy task to intercept them perfectly. In fact, it was almost impossible. Whenever this happened, a group of flying mystical beasts would descend from the sky and resolutely rush over to launch a self-destruct attack, blasting these powerful existences back. Then, the mystical beasts on the ground would come forward in waves to fight, forcing the mystical beasts back or directly slaughtering them all. Piles of corpses of mystical beasts and mystical beasts were continuously thrown out. In fact, the word thrown was not the right word to describe it. As the battle went on, the shockwaves from the impact of the demonic energy and mystical chi would send the corpses flying and shattering. Flesh and blood had already dyed the entire space. The space within a radius of hundreds of miles was filled with a pinkish air that reeked of blood. As the battle continued, the situation became more and more tragic. Yin Yang's gaze suddenly focused on the extremely sturdy golden-furred bear in the middle. Yin Yang saw that the golden-furred bear king was panting heavily but still waving his huge bear paw. Go! 7th team. Go! 9th team, go! First. Chapter 12:11. Behind the golden-furred bear king, thousands of golden-furred bears lined up into a dozen or so small teams, entering the battlefield one after another. Fighting alongside him was a group of tigers with sharp golden horns on their heads. There were also 3,000 to 4,000 of them, and they were also divided into a dozen or so small teams, continuously entering the battlefield. After fighting for less than a quarter of an hour, they had to immediately retreat and regroup, and the next squad would take their place. The cycle repeated itself. Beside them were other species, such as lions, bulls, leopards, and so on. Generally speaking, most of the combat forces of the various teams were resting. However, every Xian beast was basically covered in blood, wounds, and bruises. Why is the opening this time so big? This is really troublesome. The voice of the huge golden-furred bear was full of confusion and depression, but the king and the others have all gone to the pool of holy light. The opening of the pool of holy light that only happens once in 1,000 years, can't be interrupted in the middle no matter what. The monster tide broke out at this critical moment. It's really 2F** king stupid. Beside him, a golden-furred tiger with a human body and a tiger head grinned and said, "What the F*** are you complaining about? Just do it, are you a male? If you are, don't say you can't." Why can't I? I just think the situation is not good, and the situation is not right. You can't. This was a mystical beast with a human body and an eagle head covered in black feathers and a pair of huge wings on its back. It looked at the golden eagle that swooped down from the sky in sorrow, and its voice was a little choked. 4,000 of our eagle brothers have already died in this door, this F** king. Just as he was speaking, he suddenly heard a strange creaking sound coming from the spatial gate again, as if it had expanded on its original foundation. At the same time, a single horn flashing with lightning appeared, and it could rush out of the door at any time. F***, another Saint Emperor has come out, the golden-furred bear roared, "Silver Snake. Go blow him up." The team split into two sides, and a silver snake shot out like lightning. When its body was still in the air, it had already begun to expand rapidly. In the blink of an eye, it had already turned into a huge body that was hundreds of feet long and as thick as a house, and rushed into the special door without any explanation. However, the silver-white snake coiled up, forming the innate ability of the snake race, the coiling snake array. It suddenly blocked the entire door tightly, leaving no gap. Then, there was a hissing sound, and it was as loud as it could be. Then, there was a loud bang. The silver snake had self-detonated. With this extreme self-detonation, a large space within the door was instantly cleared. Countless pieces of flesh and blood splattered into the sky along with the aftermath of the self-detonation. Then, a shrill scream rang out as it instantly flew far away. In the short period of time after the self-detonation, the mystical beasts had clearly taken the opportunity to attack, but there were no demons rushing out of the door. Obviously, the self-detonation of the silver snake was so powerful that it had temporarily cleared the other side of the door. It was a pity that the emptiness only lasted for a short while. In the short span of a breath, countless demonic beasts came out of the door again like a geyser. Around the door, other than the countless broken limbs, there were countless broken weapons. Even the mace in the golden-furred bear king's hand had already been completely sheathed. The mace no longer had its fangs, and it could no longer live up to its name, so it could only be used as a stick. As the continuous collisions and battles continued, after Yun Yang noticed the mace, it broke into 3 pieces in less than a quarter of an hour. A roar came from the door, "Rush over. We must rush over. As long as we rush over, this sacred land of Tian-Fa will be ours." Countless demons howled and screamed from the other side of the door, their faces filled with ferocity. As for the mystical beasts here, although their fighting spirit had not waned, they had expended too much energy and were gradually showing signs of fatigue. Facing the demons that were surging out like a tidal wave, normal combat methods could no longer stop them. They could only resort to self-detonation, using the most extreme and last resort method to stop the other party. Yin Yang watched as flying mystical beasts continued to approach from all directions in the sky, one after the other, determined to die. He tried his best to maintain his direction, but the number of mystical beasts around him was dwindling. The few mystical beasts that were leading the pack were all wearing a helpless and tragic expression. "I can't hold it anymore. I can't hold it anymore." There was a limit to a human strength, and it was the same for the mystical beasts. Every time this strange door opened, it would be open for at least 3 days, and these 3 days were Tian-Fa's nightmare. Other than the dozens of high-level kings of the mystical beasts taking turns to fight, they also had to support the strongest mystical beast army in their tribe to fight to the death to ensure that they did not lose. Right now, the kings were not here, and the army was almost depleted. Only a little more than a day had passed, not even a day and a half. What were they going to do for the rest of the time? Judging from the current situation, even if they threw in all their remaining forces, including a few of their leaders, it would still be difficult for them to survive for more than 2 days. Then, in the remaining day, there would be at least hundreds of millions of demons rushing out of this door. When that time came, it would be the true catastrophe. No. Tian-Fa has guarded the sky demon door for millions of years, it must not fall in our hands. The golden bear roared with grief and indignation, "Bear King tribe. Here. Prepare to self-detonate." Yes. With an orderly shout, the 3,000 giant bear warriors behind him stood up. Every bear's face was filled with grief, anger, and determination, without a shred of fear. "Now, let our bear king use his life to defend the glory of Tian-Fa." The golden bear roared. Although he had expended a lot of his energy and was in a weakened state, this roar was not any weaker than when he was at his peak. However, a faint glint of tears flashed in his large eyes. He wasn't lamenting for himself, but for the many compatriots and comrades who were about to join hands and go to the netherworld together. The 3,000 bear warriors beat their chests and roared, "Even if Tian-Fa is humiliated, we will not live to see it." Their voices were deafening. Although the demon race was the great enemy of the human race, the mystical beasts and humans were not friendly either. If he interfered rashly, the result would be unpredictable. Even if the strength of these high-level mystical beasts were not complete, they were still far above him. If he suddenly appeared and attracted the attacks of the mystical beasts, would he be able to survive? He could not afford to take this risk. Unexpectedly, a voice rang out from nowhere. It was a woman's cold voice, thin as a thread but extremely familiar to Yun Yang. "Yun Yang, help them." Chapter 12:12. Yun Yang raised his head to look around, but the voice did not appear again. Although it was only for a moment, although it was only a soft word, Yun Yang was shocked. It was very familiar. That is. Yin Yang recalled the peerless expert in white who had taken Shangguan Lingxiu away when he was about to leave the Tianxian continent, the otherworldly beauty of the white-clothed woman. Aunt May. Yin Yang was shaken. So, it was this battle that attracted me here. There is indeed something I should do. What I should do is to help the Holy Land of Tianfa defend against the demon race. Emmy, prepare more water of vitality, I have a great use for it. In the space, Emmy let out a cry, but it was filled with doubts. Of course, he would help now. Aunt May had no ill intentions. Yin Yang was certain of this, but he still had his previous concerns. These mystical beasts were basically in a killing frenzy. How could he make them believe that he was not an outsider? Why not attack him at once? Yin Yang did not care about being attacked, but if he were to be attacked now, he would be a huge hindrance instead of being of help. Yin Yang's eyes flashed as he instructed Emmy. On the other side, the kings of the mystical beasts were bare-handed, about to launch their last extreme attack. Suddenly, there was a soft sound, and a huge saber suddenly fell in front of the golden-furred bear. The giant saber was 70 feet long, and its blade alone was 30 feet thick. Just the back of the saber was nearly 3 feet thick. Where did this saber come from? The golden-furred bear king was immediately puzzled. However, all of the weapons he possessed had already been broken and could no longer be used. At this moment, a saber had fallen from the sky. It was like a long drought meeting sweet dew. He didn't have time to think too much and had already grabbed it. Ayaya. This long saber looked like a large size, but when he held it in his hand, he realized that it actually weighed almost 10,000 jin. It was a heavy saber. All of you, move away. Let me try this saber to see if it's sharp. Bear King let out a loud roar and brandished his saber as he charged forward alone. Then, the next scene caused all the Xian beasts on the other side to be dumbfounded. They watched as the Bear King brandished the huge blade in his hand, and a snow-white blade light appeared in response to the blade, directly attacking the Xian beasts. All the demon clan members who came into direct contact with him, including their weapons, were chopped into pieces like a bunch of lanterns. The saber's momentum was not yet exhausted. A rough estimate showed that at least dozens of demon clan members had been chopped into two. The result of the battle was extremely glorious. The Xian beasts were most troubled by the strong bodies of the demon race, but when faced with this broadsword, they actually had no ability to resist. It was like a sharp knife cutting through tofu, and there was no obstruction at all. The golden bear was excited. Good knife, good knife. Everyone, retreat and rest. Wait for this prince to kill for a while. Before he finished speaking, a person really charged forward with a blade in his hand, completely disregarding the exhaustion and injuries on his body as he swung his blade to his heart's content. That golden-furred bear king's blade only had one move, from east to west, from west to east. It was like he was cutting chives. A large piece was cut, a large piece was cut, and the harvest was actually unprecedented in this battle. Although the demon clan's strength was not weak, and they had more people, the terrain was still too disadvantageous for them. There was only one door, and they could only charge out. It was difficult to use the tactic of using numbers to its fullest. On the other hand, the Bear King's side could move around freely, accumulating power, and it was truly a case of one man holding the pass against 10,000 enemies. But as time went on, even though countless demon clan members had died, the demon clan's side continued to charge out without fear of death, completely disregarding the price, disregarding the sacrifice. Indistinctly, a furious roar could be heard from the other side. Charge! Charge! Take down Tian Fa at all costs. The Bear King laughed loudly. He had never felt so carefree before. Guarding the door here, the difference between having a divine weapon and not having one was like the difference between heaven and earth. The fatigue that was originally all over his body seemed to have disappeared, leaving only incomparable excitement and the pleasure of killing so many demon clan members. Awesome! This is too awesome! The saber light danced, turning into a silver-white flood dragon. From east to west, from west to east, it actually sealed the door with the power of a single person. The Bear King was fighting, but the other kings of the mystical beasts were not idle. All of them turned their heads to look around. *CK, where did this saber come from? How can there be such a divine weapon in this world? Even the legendary unparalleled divine weapon can only be this powerful, right? Why did a saber fall from the sky when the battle is at its most intense? There must be something fishy about this. May I ask which expert is it that is helping us? Please show yourself. A crane king with a long neck cupped his fists and said to the sky. Yin Yang's silhouette slowly appeared in the air as he said with a smile, "It's nothing much, beast kings need not be so courteous." Before the gift of the saber, it would have been asking for trouble if he had shown himself. He would definitely have been attacked from all sides, and it would have been a matter of life and death. However, now that he had shown his goodwill and gifted the saber, especially after witnessing the saber's power, there would be no more problems. After all, without the help of this saber, perhaps the entire Bear King tribe would have died en masse. A divine weapon that had fallen from the sky had actually turned the entire battle upside down. It was no small matter, it was an important one. May I ask who you are? The Crane King stretched his long neck, his eyes filled with doubt. This person had shown his goodwill and gifted the divine weapon. It could be said that he was helping a building that was on the verge of collapse, saving a country that was on the verge of collapse. There was no doubt that he was a friend and not an enemy. However, how could there be such a human in the depths of Tianfa? Not to mention the depths of Tianfa, even the periphery had been completely cut off from the traces of humans due to the giant ant's barrier. This young man before him did not have a high cultivation base, so how could he have come here? In any case, the young man before him was the one who had lent him the saber, and he was indebted to him. The Crane King suppressed all the doubts in his heart, and his attitude was very friendly. I am Yun Yang, the leader of the Residents of Nine Supremes, a sect with a middle-class celestial luck banner. I have an important matter to attend to in the demon race to pluck a unique spiritual herb. When I passed by this place and saw the battle, I was touched by the heroic battle between the mystical beasts and the demon race, so I have come to lend you a hand. My cultivation base is shallow, so I can only lend you a few weapons to assist you. Yin Yang explained his origins and whereabouts clearly in a few sentences. The battle was still ongoing, so it was really not suitable for a long speech. It was more appropriate to cut to the chase as soon as possible. So it is sect leader Yun who has graced us with his presence. We greet you. The Beast Kings looked even more amiable. As the middle-class celestial luck banner appeared behind Yun Yang, it immediately proved his identity and stance. Coupled with the goodwill of lending the divine weapon, the Beast Kings naturally returned the goodwill. Thank you, thank you. The Crane King took a step forward and grasped Yun Yang's hand, his eyes extremely eager. Sect leader Yun, thank you very much. I wonder if there are any more divine weapons like this? If there are, that would be great. Chapter 12-13. They were all top-notch experts. Naturally, they could tell at a glance that the saber that Yun Yang had taken out was undoubtedly a divine weapon in this world. It was almost at the level of a dreamlike weapon. However, even if it was of such quality and effectiveness that it had almost turned the tide of the battle, it was still not enough to completely change the course of the war. This was because this divine weapon alone was not enough to support the consumption of the war. There was no divine weapon in this world that could not be worn out. The sharper a divine weapon was, the easier it was to be damaged. Among the Beast Kings who had lived until now, which of their divine weapons was not a spiritual weapon that they had forged with their life's effort and nourished with their own souls? Isn't that a E-grade weapon of outstanding quality? Yet, they had all perished in this battle. It was not that the divine weapons were not strong or sturdy, but there were simply too many demons. In the blink of an eye, the weapons in their hands would collide with the enemy's weapons hundreds and thousands of times. With the strength of the Beast Kings, killing dozens of demons was something that could be done with a wave of their hands in a normal battle. However, in the current atmosphere and the intense battle situation, there was no time for them to rest. No matter how powerful the weapons were, they would still be destroyed. Not only were the mystical beasts fighting with all their might, the demons were also fighting with all their might, regardless of the cost. After all, whether the demon race could come out and invade the bound of universe again depended on this battle. Whether the mystical beasts could defend themselves also depended on this delicate point of time. The saber that Yun Yang had lent had a dreamlike effect, turning the tables and temporarily relieving the dire situation of the mystical beasts. However, no matter how sturdy the saber was and how it was stronger than the spiritual weapons that the Beast Kings had forged with their entire lives, it could not last more than 2 hours. In spite of this, Yun Yang's declaration of, "My cultivation base is shallow. I can only lend you a few weapons to assist with 1 or 2 things," had vaguely revealed a piece of information. Yun Yang had at least one weapon like the saber in King Bear's hand, maybe even more, and he was willing to help. The news was too shocking and precious. Although the saber had only been in King Bear's hands for a short period of time, its power had basically been displayed by King Bear. It was obviously a rare divine weapon. To the mystical beasts, it was already a great favor to be able to obtain one of these weapons. Why did this young man sound like he still had more and was willing to lend them? Then, this battle might not necessarily be hopeless. Of course, with only 2 or 3 such weapons, while they could temporarily turn the situation around and even gain a certain amount of buffer space, it was still not enough to completely change the overall situation. However, it was still much better than despair and hopelessness. Yin Yang frowned slightly under the gazes of the mystical beasts, his mind working quickly. He had collected countless rare metals in the past. It should not be difficult to make dozens of similar divine weapons. However, in reality, the rare metals had to be broken down and filtered by Emmy, all of them turned into the essence of the essence. The essence obtained was actually only a small portion of the original amount. Even with Yun Yang's inventory, after taking out this saber at all costs, the remaining materials could only be used to make 5 or 6 more. The weapons used by the mystical beasts were too costly in materials. Just the construction of this saber alone had consumed tens of thousands of caddies of the essence of iron. 5 or 6 of these weapons did not seem to be enough to completely turn the tide of the battle. The final outcome could still be the complete annihilation of the Holy Land of Heaven's punishment. However, who was Yun Yang? He quickly found a way to turn the situation around. After a moment of thought, he said, "This lowly one still has 2 weapons like the saber from before. It's not a problem to lend them to all of you, but a few weapons is like trying to put out a burning cart of firewood. It won't help the overall situation. I'm thinking, can I ask the Beast Kings to collect all the broken weapons first? I'll see if I can think of a way." At this moment, Yun Yang acutely found the solution to the current situation. There was not much rare metals left in his space, but the broken weapons scattered all over the place were ready-made materials that could be used to deal with the crisis. Does sect leader Yun mean to repair the damaged weapons? The eyes of the group of Beast Kings lit up. Mystical beasts of this level had their weapons picked from countless superior weapons. The weapons that were most compatible with them were spiritual weapons that had been nurtured and watered with blood for a long time. They were no different from a part of their bodies. It was also because of this that everyone had suffered considerable damage when the weapons were broken earlier. It would be great if they could be repaired. However, was there any way to do it? Although there were cases of spiritual weapons breaking due to excessive wear and tear and being repaired by expert craftsmen, such repair work not only consumed a lot of spiritual gold and rare metals, but also took time to repair. Even if the young man before them had such a method, how could he have the time to repair the weapons in a leisurely manner? Looking at the Beast King's wounded and hopeful eyes, looking at the intact flesh mill, Yin Yang was silent for a moment before he said, "This lowly one has another secret art. As long as the damage isn't too serious and it's not completely broken, it can be repaired quickly without much of its original function being depleted." When the Beast Kings heard this, they immediately cheered in unison. Even those that are completely broken can be used as casting materials. Before Yun Yang could finish his words, he saw a dozen beast kings turn around and roar in unison. Collect all the remains of the damaged weapons. Even if they're broken. Even if they're broken. The remnants of the demon race? 2. Yes, yes, yes. I want all of them. Many hands made light work. Yun Yang rolled his eyes as he watched the group of bruised men run away. It was only a moment later. Swoosh, 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 there were already thousands of broken weapons piled up in front of Yun Yang, and this was only the first batch. There were still many strong men rushing over from afar, carrying broken weapons as if they were chopping firewood. From afar, they looked like a giant porcupine. Swoosh, swoosh, a mountain of various weapons was piled up in front of Yun Yang at a speed visible to the naked eye. As far as the eye could see, it was full of broken weapons and broken blades. Among them, the lightest condition was a weapon that was broken into 3 or 4 pieces. It could no longer be used. At this time, a few beast kings all had a flattering smile on their faces. They grabbed their weapons and came over. They had a flattering look on their faces. Leader Yun, take a look at this. Let's see if it can be repaired quickly. Sect Leader Yun, look at mine first. What a pity. You have to take a good look. Chapter 12-14. On the other side, there was a sudden roar. It was the Golden Bear King who shouted, "Someone take my place, I can't hold on anymore." So far, the Golden Bear King had held on for almost a quarter of an hour. At this time, the Golden Fur Bear King was sweating profusely, as if he had just been fished out of the water. With the current environment of continuous high-intensity combat, even if the Golden Fur Bear King had boundless strength, he couldn't hold on any longer. The Golden Bear King had been charging at the front line and had exhausted a lot of his energy. Now that his natal weapon was damaged, his physical condition was deteriorating. It was already commendable for him to fight until now with vigor and excitement after obtaining the mystical weapon. Right now, he could barely lift the saber in his hand. This saber was too heavy after all. The Golden Tiger King let out a loud roar and pounced forward. It caught the broadsword and brandished it like a tiger. At the same time, it kicked the golden bear, sending it flying dozens of zhang away before crashing into the ground with a loud rumble. The Golden Bear King bared his teeth. F***CKU, Tiger 11. Can't you F***King be gentler? And, the Tiger King's action of kicking the Bear King was half to send the Bear King away from the danger zone, and the other half was probably a little envy, jealousy, and hatred. Just a fool like the Bear King was actually able to obtain such a divine weapon before this king. If I don't give it a kick, I'll feel guilty, and the heavens won't forgive me. Beast Kings, please pass down the order, don't let anyone self-destruct for now. Yun Yang said hurriedly as he busied himself. Now that Tiger King is holding the fort, he should be able to hold on for some time. Everyone, conserve your energy for now and recover your energy. The more you recover, the better. I still have some healing medicine here, it should be of some help. Healing medicine? The Beast King's eyes turned red again. The Holy Land of Tian Fa had already prepared a lot of healing medicine to stop the demon race's invasion. However, this war had come too suddenly. The celestial demon's door had opened without any warning and the war had come. Furthermore, the opening of the door this time was far greater than any of the previous times. Unfortunately, the kings of the Tian Fa Holy Land had all gone to the Holy Light Pond, and the Xian beasts that had rushed over were fighting with their lives on the line. They barely managed to stabilize the situation, but they were still in a miserable state. From the appearance of the demonic energy, the opening of the gate, the demons surging out, to the temporary stabilization of the situation and the strict defense of the gate, only 10 minutes had passed. However, thousands of mystical beasts had been injured and thousands had died in battle. It was so fast and so cruel. He threw the ointment into his mouth and rushed up. By the time the reinforcements arrived, their battle lines would have already collapsed, and they might not be able to hold on any longer. Batches after batches of injured, batches after batches of medicine. And the medicine from Tian Fa Holy Land was not very effective. Perhaps it could be said that in a normal battle, it could already be considered a saint-rank medicine. However, in this kind of battle atmosphere, it was far from being able to keep up with the consumption. Some medicines would have no effect after being taken a few times. Towards the end of this battle, the millions of mystical beasts on their side were almost all injured. How much medicine would they need to consume with so many injuries? If there were enough medicine, there would not have been so many mystical beasts that chose to go to the extreme and self-destruct. Half of it was because they were willing to die defending the gate with their lives, and the other half was because they were helpless. Hearing Yun Yang's words, the beast kings perked up at once. How could they have forgotten that humans always carry a lot of things that they can't use in a battle? They did not know that Yun Yang's situation was different from ordinary people. It was not that he did not need them, or that he did not have any place to use them. It was just that looking at these beasts, he felt that they were inexplicably adorable. Looking at them guarding the gate, doing everything they could to prevent the demons from coming over, the blood and sacrifice they had paid, the shock in Yun Yang's heart had never stopped. Emmy took out hundreds of bottles of medicinal pills from the space. There are 100 pills in each bottle. Just take one regardless of the severity of your injuries. The Golden Bear tribe was obviously more cunning. Rolling its eyes, it said, "Warriors of the Bear tribe, each take one." Thousands of Bear tribe warriors stepped forward, each taking one pill in their hands. The pills were only the size of soybeans, placed in their giant paws. They would not be visible if they did not pluck at their fur. The bears did not hesitate, swallowing the pills in one gulp. The other tribes wanted to take the healing medicine as well, but the Golden Bear tribe stopped them with a slap. "Take it later. See how it works before you decide." Yin Yang rolled his eyes. This Golden Bear King was rather clever, knowing to experiment. However, he could not be blamed for being careful in such a war situation. After about half a cup of tea's time, the mystical beasts of the bear tribe cried out in surprise, "My dantian is heating up, my strength is recovering, it's recovering very, very quickly, my internal injuries are recovering, oh my god, they're really recovering, my scars are recovering, I'm not bleeding anymore, it's really a miracle medicine." Pfft, this is a miracle medicine. How can a miracle medicine be so effective? An awkward expression appeared on the Golden Bear King's furry face. He walked over and bowed deeply. "Sect leader Yun, please forgive me, I'm a little stupid." Although he understood that the other party's actions were understandable, Yun Yang, who was still a little uncomfortable, was almost amused by him. The little bit of grudge he had melted away instantly. The Golden Bear King was overjoyed when he saw the smile on the other party's face. You, don't be angry at me. Heh heh heh. Then, he said with a salivating face, "Sect leader Yun, brother Yun, the medicinal pills are still a little too little, can you give me more?" Yun Yang was speechless. This fellow's face changed really quickly. Looking around, he realized that although he had given out a lot of medicinal pills, the number of mystical beasts participating in the war was even greater. It was true that each of them could not get a single pill. Even for the injured mystical beasts, 10 of them might not even get a single pill. "Your Excellency Bear King, please help organize the Pinnacle Combat Force." Yin Yang frowned. "Let's gather 10 Beast Kings together. I have a counterattack plan that might be able to turn the tables and end this war." As he spoke, the Golden Tiger King flew back. It was the King Leo who had gone over to continue the battle. As for the heavy saber that Yun Yang had tossed out, there were actually many small nicks on it. "This is bad, that mystical weapon is starting to be damaged." The Golden Tiger King was panting. The 2 long scars on his forehead added 2 more horizontal strokes to the word "King" on his forehead. Looking at it now, it was actually Wang Air. As he spoke, he stroked his beard in discomfort. "Damn it, these Fae actually cut off half of this king's beard." I'm really not used to it now. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.